You guys look like... What do they look like, Jimmy?
Dorks. They look like a couple of dorks.
Get those birds! Nerds! Nerds!
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
What? Are you kidding? We got some family here.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
You are listening to the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast. Here are Brad, Lisa, Brian, and Darren.
Welcome to another edition of the It Modcast podcast. Joining us is Brian Young, the Turtle Dork.
I am Groot. I am Steve Rogers.
And also joining us is Lisa Gullickson, wife Dork.
What master do I serve? What am I supposed to say, Jesus?
And Brad Gullickson, mouth Dork.
Oh, God.
And I'm your host, Darren Smith, the Disco Dork. Ahem. No, you are not. You're not taking our pod today, sir.
Quill, why are you making your voice deeper?
No.
You are! You're imitating the God-Man! It's weird.
No, I'm not.
Look, he just did it again.
This is my voice. And welcome to the It Modcast podcast reviewcast for Marvel's Avengers Infinity War.
I've been singing that all day. Sorry.
And how does the Wakanda theme go, Lisa?
Give me a second. I was singing.
You were doing it the other day.
Yeah. T'Challa. What was the orchestra's part? I forget.
Every drum beat Lisa for the theme would do T'Challa.
Yeah, I was thinking over the breath.
T'Challa. T'Challa. T'Challa.
I got your crow little from Steve Rogers.
That's right.
At the end.
Yeah.
I picked up on
this
it
is
the
a
second,
spoilers cast.
the second
if
time
you
I
have
watched
not listened to it, or not, if you have not watched Infinity War, go do that.
Which is only like maybe 0.000% of the population going by box office
It
receipts.
crossed $250 million domestically. It's made $630 million worldwide in
Nuts.
one weekend.
If-
The highest opening gross ever, beating Star Wars The Force Awakens. Suck a dick, Lucasfilm.
Wow. Okay.
If they haven't watched the movie, clearly the only reason is because they're waiting for the mod stamp of approval.
Yes.
So before they tune out, so they can go watch the movie. Does it get the mod stamp of approval?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
it does.
We all enjoyed
Yes.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Liked it a lot. Just bounced out of the theater afterwards. Huge smiles on our dumb faces.
Were there a few smiles? 'Cause
Don't-
that when you bounced out of that initial screening,
I was like, I don't want to talk to anybody.
anybody.
Emotionally shutting down.
But we'll get into that shortly. So what we're going to do is we're going to go, as we have been doing most recently, round robin style. We're going to talk about the good of the film, the bad of the film, and the ugly of the film. So we'll start with the good. Turtle Dork, since you're to my left, we're going to go
Alright.
clockwise. You started off.
I got a lot, so
You're just going to start listing off every nice little thing.
What if we
should
went
I?
like round robin and then we like named one nice thing and then around the circle and listed another nice thing and then went around the circle until we ran out of nice things?
I
Would
think
that
we-
be the
we
longest
probably
episode
got-
ever?
We probably got the most.
Yeah,
but
let Brian kick it off.
Okay.
And then
well, I
you know,
could write a
we
list
can-
and then we just talk about what's on my.
This is stuff we probably should have talked before we hit record. But
I don't know. I feel like it gives our podcast like texture. The fact that we
okay.
don't have shit figured
Text
out.
like this scone. It's the drizzle on our podcast.
That's
Okay.
right.
Well, I'll run down my list and then I'll talk about my first thing that I have. So
You
I
do
have-
that.
I
Can I
have-
go make a sandwich? Should I go make a
it's not.
sandwich?
It's not too long.
Okay.
But a lot of my good. There's a lot of good. I mean, this movie is 2.5 hours long, and it packs a lot in this film. A couple of things I have is the opening, Thanos' introduction, Loki's sacrifice, a lot of the character interactions, and how they continue a lot of story threads from Civil War. Vision and Scarlet's relationship, the chemistry between the Guardians and Thor, some of the quieter moments, some of the scenes that I liked was the one between Gamora and Star-Lord, Thor and Rocket, the whole thing with the Soul Stone, that scene in the reality of in Nowhere, the final battle on Titan, Wakanda, and the final moments between Vision and Scarlet Witch and the snap. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Like the whole film is what you're saying.
Basically.
So let's start. One of the first things you said was appropriately the opening of the film.
That's what I'm gonna go back to is the opening. Now I love the way this movie opens up because when we get that logo that we all love and know, we hear on the ship of Asgard, there's a distress call, and that Thanos is on that ship, in which we saw from Thor Ragnarok. And I remember the Russos and Marcus and McFeely, the writers, said that we were going to learn how bad Thanos is in the first 5-10 minutes of this film, and they were correct. They didn't waste any time really establishing Thanos as a character.
Poor Idris.
I just want to say, there are a lot of people who, even still to this day, shockingly, who when a Marvel film ends, they don't watch the mid-credit sequence or the final stinger. It is, I think, worthy of note that this movie picks up immediately after Thor Ragnarok's post-credit scene.
Yeah, the mid-credits one.
Mid-credit scene, yeah.
Yeah, and some of the things that I really liked about this opening scene, not just establishing Thanos as the big bad guy and how big of a threat and his Black Order are, but a lot of the stuff that we get to see here, I love. There was something that I was talking about on my video review before it got destroyed. I loved Loki's sacrifice, and for me, I mentioned this in one of my other points of how it continues a lot of the story threads from other films, whether it be Civil War, but a lot of stuff from some of the previous films where you see the relationship between Loki and Odin. And there was one moment that right before Loki dies, spoiler alert, is that he talks, he tries to, you think he's going to turn coat again, by saying, if you go to Earth, you're going to need a guide. And
I love Thanos' response. He's like, you need a man. Loki says, you need a man of experience. And he's like, an experience at failing?
Failing is an experience.
Which Coach should call back to the first Avengers. But there was a moment that I saw the second time I saw it when Loki says, me, Loki, I am Prince of Asgard. And he pauses and he says, I'm Odin's son. And the relationship that he's always had with Odin having that tension and always kind of rejecting Odin at that moment, finally accepting that he is Odin's son.
So if this is truly the end of Loki, if Tom Hiddleston's not coming back, how do we feel about his character arc? Like, how should we feel about him as moralistically as a character?
I think it's great, even going to the end, because I think we see that arc by the end of Ragnarok, and it carries through to that opening scene in this film.
And he stays true to
who he is,
even with the misdirection and trying to pull one over on Thanos to the very end.
One of the complaints about the Loki character going into the Dark World and then Ragnarok is that Marvel saw how everybody on the planet loves Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah.
And so they want, people were like, oh, they're making him into a good guy. And they never quite did that.
No.
And that's what I've really liked about his handling. He served himself. He served the God of Mischief, that title, all the way to the end.
To the very end, yeah.
But yet, to your point, in his last moments, he says, yeah, guess what? We are brothers. I am Asgardian. I am the son of Odin.
Yeah.
And then he goes out.
And then he goes. And which I think is a noble death for him and his arc for where he is at that moment. But even before he dies.
But it's not like a redemptive arc. Which is what I think is key.
not redemptive. Yeah. But I do think it's noble for what he's doing, trying to save his brother.
And within the context of Norse mythology, it perfectly works.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's also a passing of the villain torch. Like, he was the villain of the first Avengers.
Yeah.
And like in comparison to Thanos now at this point,
he truly is a puppet.
He is small time.
True. Yeah.
So to me it was like an acknowledgement of these villains are just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. And another great callback is that line, we have a Hulk. And how Hulk comes in
and has his ass handed to him,
and the callback being specifically that Tony said that to Loki in
to Loki.
the first one, and now Loki's using it as his weapon.
So I loved when he said that, and we see Hulk comes in. But again, like we say, I think one of the guys from the Black Order, he's like, no, let him have his fun.
That's the Ebony Maw.
Ebony
Brian.
Maw, yeah, I couldn't remember. Yeah,
Although I
Ebony
think
Maw
they just refer to him as the Maw in this film.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and he said, "Let him have his fun." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And it's interesting going back looking at it because I've read that a lot of people were thinking this because throughout the whole film, there's this back and forth between Banner and the Hulk doesn't want to come out. And I'm thinking it's because Thanos put that fear.
He's scared. That's exactly what it is.
Thanos put the fear in the Hulk, and he's like, "No,
I ain't coming out."
Which I think is a tremendous thing for that character. And it's no secret that I'm a huge fan of the Hulk. He's my favorite Marvel character, not just MC, but Marvel Comics. And as far as like where can we take this character from where we have starting off with Thor Ragnarok, where we had left him there, where can we take this character somewhere interesting and give Hulk something, a worthy opponent or something to rise up against, and making him afraid of something is, to me, I think is genius.
And finally, Marvel is treating Banner's condition the way I've always wanted to see it treated. We talked about it in our Phase 3 review cast. Yeah. But, Hulk and Banner are two different beings. They have their own wants and desires. They have their own personality.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now to see them in conflict in this fashion is delightful.
And that sequence, that fight between Hulk and Thanos, it serves multiple purposes. First, it's a thrilling action sequence to open the film with. Secondly, it sets Hulk and Banner's relationship for the next next couple of films. Yeah. But also it's a shorthand establishment of Thanos as a formidable opponent.
Exactly.
Because we haven't seen Thanos get his hands dirty. They only mention him in the MCU and secondhand stories about him, or you should fear him or whatever. But this is in this moment starting the film off, we see that he is a villain who isn't just who won't just set himself on his throne and tell his underlings to do things for him. He doesn't have a problem. Actually getting physical.
10 minutes, he obliterates Asgard, kills Heimdall, kills Loki, decimates Hulk, and casts Thor aside.
Also, what I was established in this film that I really appreciate is they really divide what each stone is doing. Like when
visually.
Using those colors. When he blows up the ship, it's purple. He's using the power stone.
When he teleports, it's the blue.
Blue.
For the Tesseract,
And watching it that first time with the Thursday night crowd, because we've all seen it multiple times now, the folks, the dorks sitting here at this table, and hearing the audible, when Heimdall gets it, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's still kind of hurt.
Can we stop on Idris Elba first of all?
Sure.
I've watched a lot of movies. No way am I implying that I've seen every movie, but of all the movies that I've seen, I've never seen a person die look like that. Idris Elba died with the freaking hardest face ever.
Dope.
That was hard as shit.
It was dope.
Denzel has never even died that freaking hard.
Because I noticed that the second time I saw it, and I was like,
he died with a screw face.
Like Idris said, okay, y'all gonna use me for like a little bit of time. I'm gonna make y'all remember this.
He died with the hardest face ever. That shit was so
and it is great when he calls upon the Allfathers and asks for the dark magic one last time.
Yeah.
He's granted the ability to access the Bifrost. Yeah. And he goes out and he's in it for minutes, probably just seconds of this movie. And you compare that to something like what happens to the Warriors 3 in Ragnarok, and you're just like, oh, so even with a few moments, an actor can have an impact, a character can have an impact.
Absolutely. And his actions are pivotal too.
And they're pivotal. But at the same time, when he's the first death, you're like, okay, they're establishing Thanos as a threat. Okay, fine. But then when he breaks Loki's neck, chokes him out, and the expression on Hiddleston's face when he gurgles out, and that snap sound effect, the audience on that Thursday night crowd was not ready for Loki to go 5 minutes into this film.
It's funny, like, because a lot of the conversation leading up to this film was who's gonna die, who's gonna die, and when they killed Loki the first time around, I was like, well, that was quick. They got that out of the way quick, and now it's just gonna be kicking butt till the end of the film.
And that's never a conversation which I've always expressed that I like to have, because I think, like you said, it just, to me, it just takes away from some of the emotional narrative of the story. But I mean,
it was like, in this case, it was like a total curveball, because everybody's going like, one person's got to go.
The way I interpreted that, Lisa, wasn't that, oh, okay, so here we go, now we're going to kick butt. It was like, oh, if they're killing Hiddleston in the first 5 minutes, well, Tony Stark's doomed.
They play with that towards the end, which we'll get to, which would definitely had, especially in my second screening,
we're...
Yeah,
lots of audible guests in this film.
Yeah,
but we're still on Brian's good.
Okay,
it's a lot, but we can all chime in. But this one's kind of open ended, but it goes to more so to the next scene, which is like I say, character interaction, seeing characters who we haven't seen before. So of course, when Hulk gets back to where the Sanctum Sanctorum is, we get introduced to Tony Stark, and that interaction that I really liked between Stark and Strange.
Two dickheads.
When they're in the Santorum, and then also having Bruce Banner, which they haven't in the movie, Tony hasn't seen in probably a couple of years since he's been
2 years, I think.
Yeah, 2 years. So having all of them interact together, and then when Ebony Maw and them come to Earth, because Thanos sends them to retrieve the two stones that's on Earth, which is the Mind Stone and the Time Stone. So, and I like how it continues that thread from Civil War, when that conversation Bruce Banner has with Tony, where he's like, oh, because Vision has gone off the grid. And he's like, well, there's one person who might know. He's like, we're not on speaking terms, and the Avengers have broken up. He's like, what, like a band? So, and I like how he's trying to fill in Banner.
To talk about that moment, though, if you want to compare how Whedon directs an Avengers film to how the Russo brothers direct a scene, when the donut shows up in New York City, and they're having this conversation about, they're introducing or reintroducing the concept of these Infinity Stones, the MacGuffins of the film. And at the end of that conversation, Bruce learns that Tony and Steve are not on speaking terms. And then there's like a little hair moving on Doctor Strange's head.
Yeah.
The Russos established that invasion in a very real world, scary sense.
And he does it in a nice continuous shot from when they start inside the Santorum and they go out on the street and you see everybody running and they turn that corner. Like, I love how
car crash.
Yeah, I love how he never breaks the camera. He never cuts until he turns that corner. And so it really builds up, like you say, that moment, which I thought was just absolutely fantastic.
And then there's these two weird ass aliens standing in a street in New York City.
Yeah.
And then Ebony Maw, because he's in this film, he's basically the voice of Thanos, of Thanos' arrival.
Yeah.
And how he's doing the whole thing that he did on the Asgardian ship, rejoice, you're about to be killed by the children of Thanos. This is a great honor. And then Tony Stark just is like, shuts him down, says, sorry, Earth's closed, Squidward, or whatever the hell he says.
Yeah.
And like seeing Stark interacting with this alien presence, I loved. Like, it was so perfectly Tony.
Yeah. So like I said, all those interactions, and of course getting introduced to Peter, and he comes into the fight that happens in the streets, and like I said, just seeing Doctor Strange and Peter
and Wong is great in this scene too.
And Wong and all that stuff, and just the back and forth, and we see the new suit with Tony, and I thought all that stuff was great. So and then something else, and I know Lisa, you might want to speak to this a little bit, is I love the stuff between Vision and Scarlet Witch. And I know we talked about that before we went into the show, because I was just mentioning some of my favorite Avengers, and how Scarlet Witch is one of my favorite Avengers because of her arc from Ultron, dealing with the death of her brother, and now she's in love with Vision and the Stone. Because I know you like Vision and the character.
Oh, absolutely.
Well. But I love that whole relationship between the two of them.
And I like the fact that this relationship blossomed between films.
Yeah.
That we didn't have to go through does she like me, does she not like me? We see them, they're established. They're like hanging out in a hotel, and we get to see Paul Bettany, the actor, and what a gorgeous alien-looking man he is. So that was absolutely wonderful. What a crazy-looking couple. I love it.
To your point, though, Lisa, the relationship of Scarlet Witch and Vision, going back to Age of Ultron when he rescues her from the Sokovian rubble, then to their tiny exchanges on campus in Civil War in the beginning, and then their conflict in the middle, and then now seeing how those minor flirtations in those tiny scenes of the previous film have developed into the relationship we've all been wanting to see.
Yeah.
And that happens again with Star-Lord and Gamora. Like the fact that, we knew they were destined to be together, and now they are. We missed, like, their first kiss happened so long ago. We don't know how long ago. They're just like a straight up working couple now.
Yeah. And we basically learn as we get towards the end of the film that Vision is going to be the MacGuffin of this whole thing, because it really comes down to him after Thanos gets all of these stones. And so I like that, because it really just kind of builds in that relationship, as far as like, because Vision is always saying, it's only you that can destroy the stone, and Scarlet Witch doesn't want to do that, but ultimately it's going to come down to that.
They do a lot of callback lines in this film. They'll have a phrasing at the start of the film, and then they'll repeat it from a different character. So in their case, when Vision is sensing something amiss with his Mind Stone while they're in Scotland together. He's like, what do you feel? And Scarlet Witch is like, well, I feel you. And then the film comes down to Scarlet Witch, you have to kill your lover before Thanos gets his stone.
Yeah.
And then he repeats back, like, look, it doesn't hurt me. I'm not in pain. All I feel is you.
Yeah.
And just like, oh, that's awesome.
That also establishes like one of the main themes of the film of what Steve Rogers said, like, we don't trade lives.
Yeah, and that's another callback.
And you, like, every single stone comes down to, well, give me the stone or I'll kill this person. And then everybody's like, well, take the stone because I'm not going to let you kill this person. And for Vision, it comes down to, really, he wants to make this sacrifice. He wants to give his life to save the world, and they won't let him.
No, they won't. Yeah, it's just awesome.
It don't matter anyway.
Let me ask Lisa, do you, as far as we've talked about the opening of the film with Thanos aboard the Asgardian wreckage and obtaining the stone after killing Loki. Is there anything in that sequence, in that scene, that you or Brad also would be on your list as far as good?
I mean, the wreckage sequence, the Asgardian sequence
that we haven't already talked about.
I mean, the only thing I would say is, in Loki's death, his last line to Thanos is, you'll never be a god. Right. You'll never have worshipers like I do. You know, and again, that gets called back to my quote from the beginning. When he does achieve that level of omnipotence with the gauntlet, and Steve Rogers' last words of the film being, oh God, cut to Thanos enjoying his sunrise.
I think it's a weird thing to say, though, because he totally already has, like, he's got, like, with one stone, he's already got total godlike powers. He's got worshipers already. He's got the children of Thanos. Like, to me, like,
well, it's inaccurate, but that is from Loki's point of view. Loki has lived centuries as a god, as a worship being. And he's saying, like, you're new, okay? So you're not going to be this. Yeah. People aren't going to love you.
People aren't going to remember you.
But, I mean, he's wrong.
Yeah, he's totally wrong.
Yeah.
And that's what you learn in this film is you're not watching an Avengers movie. You're watching a Thanos film.
Yeah.
Avengers won't return. Thanos will return.
Yeah. And they were so right. They said this is going to be a Thanos-centric. It's going to be his story. And it really was his movie.
Right.
So, like, if you want to say, like, what did I like about the beginning is how it establishes Thanos. Finally, he gets off his ass out of that seat and proves himself the character that I've always wanted to see cinematically, that I've always seen in the comic books.
Yeah.
What about you, Lisa?
I appreciated the fact that even in this super dark scene, they still have the humor. They're insisting upon the humor because that's one of the things that sometimes gets criticized about Marvel films, that they're too, like, they can be too silly. But that really is how these characters established in all of these films deal with stress, you know?
And what's so wonderful in Infinity War with the humor, every Marvel film we've seen before this film ends with the heroes on top. And so the humor are just like high fives all around.
Right.
And with Infinity War, on second, third, fourth watches, the humor is like a dagger.
Oh, positively.
Yeah, because there's a lot of heavy scenes that the humor breaks that tension, which I think it's actually it serves those scenes. Like another one, excuse me, is well, we get introduced to Thor with the Guardians, but when he mentions that, you know, Thanos can't find the Soul Stone because no one knows where it is, we get that shot of Gamora, and we realize, oh shit, she knows where the Soul Stone is. And that conversation that she has with Star-Lord, where she says, look, I know something, and if Thanos gets a hold of me, you have to promise me that you're going to kill me.
And you got to promise on your mother.
On your mother.
Right? And that line means nothing if you have not been on the journey. Right?
Exactly. And the way that scene ends with Drax saying, you know, I've been here for an hour, it breaks, because that's a heavy scene between the two of them. And that's the first time we've seen that kiss. Because, again, another callback, the whole, like he says, the whole Sam and Diana thing, will they, won't they?
That unspoken thing.
That unspoken thing. And we finally see them, which, you know, you could say that kiss is like a seal of fate, which we'll talk about soon for a character. But that's one of my favorite scenes of the movies between the two of them. But yeah, it breaks it with that scene with Drax. So,
but those humor moments when, you know, we're laughing at Drax being super slow, eating his Zagnut in the tiniest way possible, and we're all laughing like, oh, how Drax? Yeah, Drax is gone, man. All right, he's gonna get Infinity out. And so, like, every humorous moment on this for this film doesn't get we will not get the relief until Avengers 4.
Oh yeah.
And so it makes this entire experience of Infinity War a much more somber thing, including every joke.
True. That's very true. Yeah, I agree with you.
I say that's awesome.
I agree.
So after that scene with the opening sequence, like Brian mentioned, we are in Heimdall's last ditch effort is to send Banner to Earth. We pick up with Banner meeting Doctor Strange and Wong, and that's where we meet Tony. Is there anything in that particular sequence, starting with Tony finishing his jog with Pepper Potts, culminating with them being in space on that? That's of note. That scene starts with at the Sanctum Sanctorum, and it ends when Tony and Spider-Man and Doctor Strange are in space.
Yeah,
that's an epic sequence.
Is
there anything on that?
You want to highlight?
Yeah, that you found good.
I loved the little moment of Peter Parker on the bus.
Yes.
Like
Ned.
Yeah, like because we had seen the Spidey sense in the trailer, and that was a super exciting moment. I remember seeing that at Comic-Con, seeing that moment where like everybody's like shit, you know, and but like that interaction with Ned, and Ned knowing like if he's waking me on the bus, shit is going down. And then he sees the donut in the sky, and he's like, we're all gonna die. Like, it's so good. It's so Ned.
But again, like what the Marvel films do so well, and what we all worry about every time an Avengers film comes out, is like, how are they gonna handle all these characters? Okay, Ned, you have 2 lines.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay? And in those 2 lines, he's totally Ned.
Exactly.
This is one of the points I wrote down as one of my goods. Was I love that this is not a standalone movie. Like I've seen bouncing around that New Yorker article, like criticizing like that this movie for you have to like have seen all of the previous movies to get this movie. I love that. I love the fact that this is a culmination of all of those things.
Point.
And so when you see Ned on the bus, you are thrilled. And when you see how he reacts in that moment, you go, that is so Ned.
But unlike other Avengers films, you know, the previous 2, unlike even Civil War, while you would benefit watching the previous films, for the most part, I think you can go in, watch it and go, oh damn, that was cool. Let me see what happened before. Let's see what happened before this movie.
Yeah.
This film truly feels like an epic crossover movie.
A build-up.
Well, and it's all third act, right? Like every scene is a climax scene.
Oh, in this film.
In Infinity War.
When it starts, it goes.
I'm sure plenty of people went to the movies and had never seen a Marvel movie before, or only seen a handful of them. Like we were talking about in Phase 3. What movies do you need to see?
Yeah.
My answer would be different now, by the way. But I truly think, like, if you want to have the experience that the dorks are having, you need to have seen Iron Man to now. You need to see all 18 movies.
And I really appreciated the fact that we did the rewatch and we had those discussions before going into this film. So all of that rich goodness was still super fresh.
I mean, that's not an elitist thing. Like it is a totally unique cinematic experience.
Exactly.
And it's a reward. It's a reward for all of that time you spent in the theater, all of the time you spent with your friends talking about these films.
And even with characters, which we'll talk about, like seeing Captain America, the first Avenger, when we see another character come up, it's like, oh shit.
Well, but like just going back to the Loki death, right?
Yeah.
If this is your first appearance of Loki, who cares? All right. All right.
Yeah.
So this guy, Tom Hiddleston, died. All right, whatever. They gave him no character work, guys. They gave him no character work. Actually, they gave him a ton of character work. You just weren't aware of it because you hadn't seen the previous 19 films.
And even like those lines of dialogue, to hear Loki say, "We have a Hulk," like that does something when you hear that, because oh shit, like that's what Tony said to him 6 years ago. So it's like
it's all part of his finale. It's all part of his narrative.
This entire movie is payoff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that I haven't read that article that you're talking about, Lisa.
Neither have I. I just saw the retweets of it.
Twitter.
But I think it is important that you have watched these other films, and it is rewarding, like you mentioned, especially going by the audience's reaction that we saw when we saw the film multiple times. You can hear the payoff of being with the MCU for 18 films up until this one. When someone utters a line, "We have a Hulk," the fact that hits with an audience is because of them being on this journey since the first Avenger all the way up until now. And
or even Loki's pause before saying Odin's son.
Odin's son, yep.
Like
yeah.
That is a notable thing because of all of the previous films.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And so and as far as my good for everything that we've spoken about up until this point, I did speak on it. But again, I just want to draw attention to that sequence that ends with Tony, Peter, and Doctor Strange in space.
Okay.
The fact that it starts at the Sanctum Sanctorum, and then it, like you say, the Russos take that real world, that ground level feel as far as handling the invasion. They go outside. They have this battle. Spider-Man joins. That sequence when the big guy he smashes the
Call Obsidian.
Call Obsidian smashes the cab and throws it. Peter catches it with his web and slings it back at him.
Yeah.
Like just the choreography of those sequences was just
everything with Ebony Maw. Like such a great, creepy, weird, funny, awkward demon of a character.
Yeah, like that moment where he tries to get the time stone because he has that hex or whatever on it, so he can't grab it, and he's like, "Well, I'll just take it off your dead body."
I love watching his movements in this film. The way he waves off debris, the way he cuts through that car, the way he insults Doctor Strange by putting him into the bricks and saying, "Oh, I bet you really are great at parties with children," or whatever. Yeah. And then the way he levitates down the street
with his arms crossed.
Yeah.
There is an ease.
There
is an ease to his powers that we do not see in Doctor Strange. Like Doctor Strange has all of this fanciful, twisty, turny, and with
hand
Ebony Maw,
signals.
it's just just a flick of the hand.
Yeah. But he even mentions, he says, "Your powers are inconsequential to me."
Yeah.
Right.
But even though Doctor Strange and that battle between him and Ebony, like when he takes the bricks and makes those darts and he flings them and then he opens the portals.
And then Wong does the other portal.
Yeah, and it flings back to him. Like all that stuff is just.
And then, Ebony Maw gets hit in the eye and he's pissed.
It's just awesome. Man.
Lots of portal fun in this movie.
It is.
Like if that's your one trick, you can do a whole lot with
Do a
that.
lot.
Yeah,
with that,
Avengers 3 Porter Wall.
Yeah. So now we get to the part at the end of that sequence. Banner picks the phone up and he's going to make the call. And as soon as he picks that phone up, you hear the music. You hear the music playing, the Rubber Band Man playing,
Band Man.
and
I'm just singing that.
every screening
Yeah.
I've gone to, when the word space comes up on the screen, the audience cheers because they know
And they
space belongs
laugh.
to the Guardians.
And I mean,
And
you
they
hear that
laugh.
music kicking in.
Because space is enormous. Could you have like a more vague thing? Like they're just in space.
But for me, my takeaway is like when they show space and the audience cheers, it's because space belongs to the Guardians. We know that this is their realm.
And it's so, I love, like the second time watching it, I just pick up on this, and it's so Guardians. Like when you cut into that ship and you see Star-Lord singing, and it cuts to all the Guardians, and just how they're sitting down. You got Rocket leaning with his leg up, and Gamora's like leaning back, singing to the music.
That's
It's
the
just-
thing, though. Like seeing Gamora just belting out with the music, that is another like emotional highlight, right? Like
Yeah.
she and Peter, they're in sync finally to the
Yeah.
music.
Yeah.
It's just cool. It just feels like it feels like the Guardians when you see that shot of them in the ship.
So starting with this, so let's start with the beginning of this sequence, because this sequence is important because, as you mentioned earlier, this is when the Guardians first encounter Thor. So they receive a distress beacon.
Yeah, the one we hear at the beginning.
Yes, and so they come upon the wreckage of the Asgardian ship. So let's talk about that, because from the introduction to the Guardians to when they bring him on the ship and they decide that, okay, you're going to take the pod. So let's talk about that as far as your good.
I mean, again, my good is just the chemistry that they have between Thor, because this is the first time that we've seen the Guardians interact with any other characters in this universe. So, and for Thor to be the first character that they interact with, it seems appropriate.
Yeah, it's definitely logical. Makes sense. They're both space space people.
Yeah, it definitely makes a lot of sense, and I think a lot of that interaction between them was really spot on, especially like when Mantis wakes him up, and the interaction that Peter has, like this man ego of trying to just stand up to Thor. I don't know. Part of me, this may go to a little bit of the bad, but it's more nitpicky. I think Peter comes off a little bit too much like an asshole in that
Oh,
scene.
I love it.
I don't know,
I think he's like a totally insecure guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he wants to present himself as this super suave, super handsome
I think
dude,
it's
but he's
totally in
just
keeping
not.
with
Yeah,
what
yeah.
we know of him.
Absolutely. Before the Pirate Angel steps aboard that ship, Peter's the man.
Right.
And he's
And
been
how
the man.
delicate is that?
And
It's
his-
just entirely.
And Drax immediately emasculating with him, like, that's not a dude. You're a dude. That's a man.
It's a man, yeah.
You know, what it does for me is it positions what is Thor amongst all these heroes.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about this a little bit later as the film progresses. You know, next to Thanos, Thor has the most time on screen. And the way Thor is portrayed in this movie is my favorite handling of his character.
Me too.
It doesn't. We were talking about it during Phase 3 cast. You know, like how since the first Thor film, they've been trying to figure out how Chris Hemsworth Thor should behave in a movie, and Ragnarok, on dumping on him narratively so hard, and making him a little bit of a butt of the joke.
Yeah.
It reduces Thor, especially now after the opening scene of this movie. Thor has never been lower. I mean,
Right.
he's had everything robbed from him. But at the same time, he is a god being.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, he isn't a dude. Right?
No.
He is a pirate angel. And everything in this film elevates Thor to being the only character in the film that could go up against Thanos and his Infinity Gauntlet.
Absolutely.
Having said that, can I use this moment to talk about my revelation I had with
Yes, sure. This is
Infinity
going to be like a
War?
9-hour podcast,
Hey.
guys. Guess
All
what?
right.
It's Infinity War. We've been waiting 10 years for this.
There you go.
This
Sit
is-
down, get a lunch, get a dinner, hang with us.
Yeah.
And also, our bad segment, don't worry, it's going to be very small.
Yeah, exactly.
and this is going to be very quick because of everything you said just now. Because of Thor Ragnarok, Thor is my favorite Avenger.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
Yeah.
I can
He is
totally see that.
Ass. I love him because of his goofiness, the fact that he can be funny, but also the fact that he can be emotional. There's a in this scene that we're talking about, we're probably going to get to it. He has a very poignant emotional
One of
beat
my favorite
here.
scenes.
Same.
And he's so well rounded as a character. And when we get to the end of the film,
Oh my God, that's my favorite crowd pleasing moment. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
So,
Goosebumps.
so I just want to say, no disrespect to the Hulk. He's still my dude. He's still my favorite Marvel character.
Yeah, but he's just a dude.
But exactly. But Thor is as of watching Infinity War, he's my favorite.
And
Avenger.
it's so weird because before the movie came out, they were saying, I talked to you about that, like who has the most screen time. They said Thanos, Gamora, and Thor have the most screen time.
And you're
in
like,
this film.
"Aw."
And I'm like, really? Like, but I saw that. Well, Gamora is the daughter of Thanos. It makes sense. So, but I want to see how this is going to play out if they have the most screen time out of everybody. And watching the film, like it all works.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah. So in this sequence, we do get that funny dialogue back and forth as Thor is unconscious, but Mantis is instructed to wake him up, and so when he wakes up, that's when we have our exchange between Thor and the rest of the Guardians. And so we have more posturing from Peter. That's where I took my quote from. But Thor's idea is to, take one of the pods, take Rocket and Groot.
Because he has to forge a new weapon. And
Yeah,
the name of that
to
plant,
where, Brian?
Neverdelira.
Yeah.
That is a word.
Yeah. Because I can't say it, but I knew Brian could.
Yeah.
No, it's funny because again, my video review that got destroyed. I was trying to say, I was like, I don't want to say the name of the planet because I know I'm not pronouncing it right. It's like Neverdelira or something like that. And I'm just like, I don't know, but yeah. So he takes Rocket and Groot, and they do
Because
that.
Rocket's the captain.
Yeah, and we get exposition more about the stones because we learn, of course, we know the reality stone is with the Collector and the other two stones on Earth. And again, this is what we learn more about. Because it's funny how in our fandom, in the bubble, like everybody on social media is talking about, oh, where's the Soul Stone? The Soul Stone, everybody's...
It's in the vibranium.
Yeah, everybody's thinking it's on Wakanda. But then like when he mentions that and you see that shot of Gamora, you're like, oh shit, she knows something. And so we get to learn a little bit more backstory about her and what she knows, and the fact that now the Guardians are split. So they're going to help Thor forge this new weapon. The other Guardians now have to go to nowhere to get the Reality Stone.
And before the scene with Star-Lord and Gamora, where she makes him promise, "You got to kill me," we do get a flashback sequence.
So that's before.
Yeah,
that's
before.
right.
That's how the scene is introduced.
Yeah.
And we see Gamora as a child on her home planet with her mother holding her in the hut. And we see Thanos and the Chitauri and Ebony Maw landing on that planet and wiping it, or basically having the planet, right? Killing half the life on this planet. And that we learn that's his deal. Thanos isn't being whispered to by Mistress Death. He's all about balancing the universe, and that's why he wants these stones. And I love when he's talking about the universe is finite, its resources are finite.
Yep.
We got to fix it. What we need is, what's the opposite of finite? Infinity.
Yeah.
He needs the Infinity Gauntlet. He needs to reset the clock on the universe so we can survive.
Yeah. Which is that's interesting too. Like I said, that whole scene with
he's not wrong.
No, he's not. And again, which plays into the fact of as far as like these villains, we talk about it with Killmonger, where you understand the reasoning for why they're doing, and we get that a lot of the scenes between Gamora and Thanos.
He's a little bit more of a maniac than Killmonger.
He is.
He's a little more, classically bad.
But when he has those quieter moments, those dialogue scenes between him and Gamora, you understand his positioning and why he's doing this. So, and that's what I like, getting that from his perspective. And again, Josh Brolin, I just thought was just magnificent in portraying him in that way.
So after Thor and Rocket and Groot take the pod, we cut to, if I'm not mistaken, we cut to Scotland. So before we get to Scarlet Witch and Vision, is there anything as far as good in that Thor Guardian sequence, Lisa, that you have on your list?
I just love the entire arc between Thor and the Guardians because Thor is this god creature. The fact that he's put with the bunch of assholes standing in a circle, creates this interesting dichotomy that elevates the Guardians by association, which is really fun. And I think we finally do have that balance of Thor's character, the balance of the god and the surfer dude.
Yeah.
And I think that that the Guardians really grounded him in that way with that humor and that reverence.
Yeah. One last point. I just thought about this now. Groot, because I love Groot, and growing with the Guardians over the last two films and this film, like that one line when I think Rocket tells him to put the game away, and he's like, "I am Groot," and then but everybody understands Groot now. Like in the first movie, when Peter meets Groot, like he's like, "Why does this dude keep saying the same thing?" But now they've been together for so long, like he understands Groot. Yeah. So I just like the fact that you really get to be with these characters.
Interesting about the Guardians timeline, where like how much time do we think is passed from Guardians 2 to Infinity War? Because
enough time for Baby Groot to grow into teenage Groot.
Baby Groot's teenage Groot. Gamora and Peter are a couple.
Yeah. I was going to say years, like I don't know, 5 years. But if you take into account at the end of the Dark World, they take the ether to the Collector and putting that into the timeline of Guardians 1 and 2, I guess it's only been a few years. It's been like 2 years.
Maybe. Because remember, it's been 2 years since Bruce and Thor have been gone from Civil War.
Right. I'm guessing it's about the same timeline. And that Groots they grow quickly.
Just grow quickly,
Probably quicker. Yeah.
What about you, B? Any good for this thing before we move on?
I think I've said everything I wanted to say. And I want to continue that conversation on Thor. Further into the timeline.
One good that I want to add is, and it goes to what you were talking about, Lisa, as far as Thor and how the Guardians receive him and how they're elevated. But also when Drax informs Thor that Thanos, that Gamora is the daughter of Thanos, he says, Thanos killed he stands up and everybody's like, oh shit. And Peter's like, he's trying to diffuse it. But she hates him just as much as you do. She's adopted. But then Thor goes over to her and his exchange with her is not what you expect. He shows her empathy. He shows her sympathy. He says we have something in common, and he's kind to her.
Families are rough.
And so for me, that was another thing that just put him up like 3 notches for me, because yes, he is a god, but he's also open and he's warm too, and that's a thing that I was talking about as far as Thor being such a well-rounded character.
And that's also something Gamora has never gotten before.
Yeah.
Like if we go back to the first film and people want to kill her just because of her association with Thanos. Yeah. So the fact that someone can reach out to her in this way and go like, ugh, aren't families the worst?
Yeah.
Is really sweet.
Yeah, because, he's an Asgardian. He's a mythological character with mythological family problems. That dude understands the relationship between Gamora and Thanos.
Yeah.
And of course, with Peter's insecurities, he has to mention the fact that I had to kill my father, killed my mother, and I had to kill my father.
My dad's a celestial, okay, man.
And I came out with both of my eyes.
So after that, we come back to Earth. We're catching up with Scarlet Witch and Vision in Scotland. And so let's talk about this scene, because this is this one kind of mirrors the Tony, Bruce, and Doctor Strange sequence in that it starts out small between them and then it escalates because we have the introduction of
it's super intimate. It's in their bedroom.
Yes, right? and then they have they're attacked and then they have reinforcements come help them. So that's an extended sequence. So let's talk about that. Let's go around
that reintroduction of Cap. Well, I love like the fact that we have Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight who are going after them, and we see that scene where he gets stabbed and they try to take it from his head.
Yeah, he can't phase.
No, yeah, you can't phase.
So before we get to that, in the bedroom, is there anything that struck you specifically because of the relationship between those two characters where we last left them?
No, I mean I think Lisa mentioned it when we were talking about the scene in the bedroom where she's like, like, what do you feel when
Right.
you look at the stone?
Brad
It's
mentioned
like,
that,
yeah.
but I agree.
I'm
I
sorry.
totally would have said it if I could get a word in edgewise.
Married to your husband.
But I think those, like, again, just that that symbiotic relationship that they have towards each other and just building upon that relationship is a thing that I just like seeing, and of course that escalates and grows throughout the course of this film between the two of them as well.
Yeah.
I think the important conversation was actually, that was an important conversation, the one with the Mind Stone.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of character, I love the conversation of him going like, like being so stumbly and insecure and being like, I really like you, and I just
I think this has
like,
been
should
working.
we stay together? Like, why don't we just continue running away together? And in terms of like turns of phrase coming back that like he wants her to stay, and she's going like, we have obligations, we both have obligations elsewhere, and then later when he's having his ass handed to him and he wants to keep her safe and he asks her to go, she goes, you asked me to stay, so I'm gonna stay.
Yeah.
I fucking love that. I love it. Love it. Love it.
I love Elizabeth Olsen's performance in that specific conversation of, this works. When she's like, no, it works. It works. This, like their chemistry, even though we have not really had this relationship at this level before this moment, you believe it.
You do.
I think
You do.
what makes it so sweet is the fact that we know that Vision is this like all-powerful, worthy character, but with Scarlet Witch, he has these insecurities.
Yeah.
Like with Wanda, he feels insecure, and it is so sweet. And so she becomes the kind of like mom in that moment. Like don't worry, things are fine.
Yeah.
You're good. We're good. And then when he has his boo-boo, she's just like, you asked me to stay. I'm going to stay. I'm here to take care of you. So don't worry.
If Mjolnir was still around, do you think that he could lift it still?
Yeah.
After he lost his V card? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, he's. Oh.
I don't know.
I
think he's still worthy.
You think he's still worthy?
I think he's entirely still worthy. I do think that like he is trying on humanity like a suit.
And I was thinking when you were just talking, Lisa, that Scarlet Witch helps make Vision human. I think, and pulling out all these emotions and having him get to the point where he's stumbling over himself, where he can be smitten with somebody. I think she helps humanize him, in a thematically, but also as a person, as an entity. Like she makes it, as far as me being an audience member, she makes it more believable that this sentient robot is more and more, through someone else showing him love, is making him more and more human.
You never feel like, oh, this is creepy gross.
No, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
She's also nuts powerful.
She is.
And there's a bottomless to it that feels like kind of Dark Phoenix to me, where it's just like there's going to be a film where Wanda is the villain.
No more mutants.
Oh no! But and we get pieces of it. And I think also that is kind of humbling to Vision. The fact that she does have insights that other people don't have.
Yeah.
And from film to film, Scarlet Witch's abilities have only increased.
Yeah.
So after Proxima Midnight and
Corvus
Glaive, they arrive. Like you mentioned, Lisa, they give Vision a boo-boo. And then
Poor Vision. He is just a pincushion in this film. He's
got
getting
hit.
stabbed right and left.
Yeah.
I know.
Always in the same little
and always from the
spots.
back. Like, come on, dude.
You know what I love, though, is I love seeing, again, speaking to Scarlet Witch's abilities, her being able to stitch him back up.
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Chaos magic.
And so
How come she can't pluck that stone out then?
Well, she basically does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. For lack of a better term.
Yeah.
I think she could. I think
She doesn't
Wanda
want
is
to.
still
She doesn't want to.
No. I don't think it's about want. I think Wanda is not.
In
She
touch with everything.
she
can
does
do.
not know what she's capable of. I don't think anyone in the MCU has seen
The
the
full
top
extent.
of her abilities.
Yeah.
And that goes back to your point, Lisa. She's going to be driven mad by it.
This scene would also be, judging by the audience, a fan favorite scene because not only are we reintroduced to Wanda and Vision, but this is when we are reintroduced to Captain America, Black Widow, and Falcon. So they come to the rescue. So let's talk about that because that would lead to the end of this particular scene.
I love it.
So
I love it. Like when you see that train passing and you see like the little silhouette
Yeah.
and we're like, here he is. There, like everybody's been waiting for.
Yeah.
And you see, and I think it's Proxima that throws that spear and he catches it that we see in the trailer all the time, and he walks out the shadow. Man, and then that music, his theme kicks in, and it's so great.
We haven't mentioned Alan Silvestri yet, but I think his score work in Infinity War is really, really solid.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Sorry.
And how he plays with previous themes.
Yeah, and then it just goes into this really, really great action fight scene between Proxima and Black Widow, and then Cap steps in, and then Falcon steps in. So,
well, I love that. Like Proxima Midnight throws that spear at the silhouette of Captain America. Rogers catches it, throws it back, not to Proxima, but to Black Widow, and then Black Widow.
Yeah, it's an awesome sequence. I love it.
anything else to add before we move on?
It's all great.
I like her. I like the blonde.
I mean, I would just say, the Black Order, I think are just super cool. And I really, really enjoy all of them for the most part. And it's just a thrill to see those characters cinematically.
I feel like Ebony Maw is a character. I'm not feeling the other two so much.
Well, that will go into something I might talk about in the bad segment.
Yeah, I love the design. I wanted to feel a little bit.
I think that
the only two that really have any personality are Proxima Midnight and Ebony Maw.
Yeah.
All right, so if I'm not mistaken, the next sequence is that flashback with.
Yeah, because we're on the Quinjet talking. I think Cap says something about Vision being off the grid, and then I do remember it cuts to black, and then that's when we see the flashback with Thanos
and Gamora
and not baby but toddler Gamora.
Yeah, and so that would lead into the discussion between Peter and Gamora. If Thanos catches me, you have to promise to kill me.
So I guess that takes us to nowhere.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a fantastic scene.
Yeah.
The scene in Nowhere with the reality, because again, how that all built up, and I didn't know he had the stone at that moment. You know, so I'm still thinking he's trying to get the stone from the Collector, but he's just really baiting all of them in there.
And Drax getting to see Thanos for the first time.
So we have a pre-Soldado 2 showdown between Roland and Benicio.
Oh yeah, that's right. I didn't think that's right.
Yeah. So let's talk about that sequence, because that turns out to be, for one, this was one of the most disturbing sequences in the film, with what happens to Drax and Mantis. Like, I found that disturbing, and I thought that they were dead at that point. I thought he was going to leave her ribbons and him like blocks.
And he used the reality stone for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
the reality stone is like
it's
the
Scarlet Witch.
scariest
It's like
fucking stone.
It's whatever.
Like, like once he has that stone, it's just like game over. And I think that comes down to like Doctor Strange just handing the time stone over. It's just like game over, man.
So
I think we'll get to that.
We'll talk about that.
So within this sequence, though, we have several great character moments. So firstly, it's firstly it's before they sneak up, and Drax sees. Oh yeah, when she's holding her hands like this, she's doing her finger like this. Yeah. Drax sees Thanos, and automatically he goes like Kill Bill Red.
And that's what I love. Again, like you set up so many of these story threads from other films that I could keep bringing up, but I love the fact that the Russos never lose sight of these subplots or these character arcs, you know, that were introduced about Thanos killing Drax's
Wife
family.
and daughter.
Yeah, family. So it's like, so when you see that again, it just brings up from those other films that you could feel his rage that he has when he sees Thanos.
Yeah.
And Peter trying to stop him, you know, and then when she puts him to sleep with Mantis, and he just
I love the ineffectiveness of Star-Lord in this film. Like the fact that he's like trying to be the leader and it's just like utterly failing.
Yeah.
The game's, you know, it's nothing he's ever played before, and he doesn't even understand the concept.
He's out of his element.
Yeah.
He looks like he's just doing what he's seen in movies, like when he was 10.
Yeah. So we have the moment when it's revealed to Gamora that Thanos has been altering the reality. Nowhere is actually a burning rubble, and he's already attained the gem. And so she thinks, but before that happens, she thinks she kills him. So let's talk about that, because that's a very emotional moment for her. She breaks down. Did you think that was out of sadness or a cry of relief?
I'm still trying to.
I think it's relief. I also think that he was kind of her daddy.
Yeah, it's both.
Yeah, and that's what I got from it too. Like, even though she was taken from her home planet, this is still the the alien who raised her. You know, even though she didn't like her childhood, this is still the person that she
had
sees
a turning point. I mean, she was raised to be a killer. There was a point where she was killing people for Thanos.
That's why, and he says that, like, I've raised you to be the strongest warrior in the galaxy, and that's who she is. So there's a part of her identity that's tied to how Thanos raised her to grow up. So I think there is something there, you know, that's why she broke down.
Her turn really only happens in Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, she makes a decision maybe before going after the orb, but certainly after interacting with these dudes, that she's not going to be on the Thanos side anymore. That she doesn't believe in his mad Titan philosophy.
Yeah.
Also, like when we see that flashback of him like meeting her for the first time and giving her this double-sided dagger, there is definitely some grooming going on where he is currying her favor and being on his face very kind. And I do
Love
think
the performance there.
it's a brilliant performance, and I do think that he loves her like a daughter.
We know he loves her.
He saw her. Yeah. We'll talk about that later. But you know, he saw her and he wanted to care for her and create her in his image, and I think all of that plays into this rage that she has, and then this breakdown that she has when she believes that she killed him.
Yeah. So after it's revealed that she did not kill him, we get the scene. It's another powerful scene. It's a great moment when Peter has to make good on his promise to her. So let's talk about.
Yeah, and how Thanos just he tries to force him. He's like, you know, she told you to do it, so go ahead and do it.
I don't think this guy's what you think he is, daughter.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to do it. He feels like he can't, but then, you know, gun turns to bubbles, you know, and that gets a bit of a laugh, but it's still
brutal.
kind of
It's
like
scary.
It's brutal, but like the second time or third time I watched the film, I caught a look at her face after that moment, and she smiles.
Smiling. Yep.
She smiles because she knows
as he's pulling her into the void, she's smiling.
She smiles because she knows that Peter loves her.
And Thanos is impressed by Peter.
I like, he's like, he says
Dad
something like,
likes my boyfriend.
it's like I like you.
Yeah.
It's a couple of lines that he has, especially at the end with Tony that I like. This,
I hope they remember you.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's like, you have my respect.
Well, the thing is, Thanos is principled.
Yeah.
And I think that that's part of what makes him so tremendously scary, because he believes that what he's doing is right, and there is a right and a wrong, and
he's the only one who knows.
And he's the only one who knows, and that's why he thinks he has the authority to give out these compliments.
Yeah. So I think after this scene, because prior to this scene, when they're flying the Quinjet after they've rescued Vision and
yeah.
Scarlet Witch. Cap says, "Let's go home." So after the scene on Nowhere, we return to Avengers HQ, and that's when we first we meet Rhodey again.
Before we leave Nowhere, Darren, I just want to say I love Benicio del Toro's collector acting.
Oh man,
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
when his
Even-
chest is being stepped on,
Yeah.
and he's making this horrible face.
Even though it's not collector, but it is collector. But that's the thing, right? That magnificent. That's like the most Benicio, so good.
That's
so
my
good.
dude. That's my. And then when he's waving bye bye when the shifting.
That dude is making some choices.
So once again, he's on set for like a day.
Yeah.
He has a few lines, a few moments.
But it's so that character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
and it's not that good.
what I love about that scene or that is that Thanos making the collector say and do these things for
It's
the performance,
the
alter
reality gem. I think like when Thanos uses the reality gem to bring the collector back, and maybe it's very similar to how it all went down.
Yeah.
But when the reality gem's active, that is a living thing.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're reintroduced to Rhodey, and this is when Banner also sees Natasha again for the first time.
Yeah,
beautiful
but we get
moment.
that interaction between Rhodey and General Ross,
Yes.
continuing from Civil
Civil
War.
So glad to see William Hurt still in this movie.
Yeah, it was cool to see him again, even though it's like a hologram.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see him again and continuing that story as far as because Captain America and his team are on the run. But because of everything that's happened and Rhodey losing his legs and the cost, what cost him, when they come in, it's like that scene where Ross says, arrest them, and he just swipes it away. He's like, that's a court martial. But there's bigger things at play here.
Yeah, I mean, like aliens just invaded New York for the second time.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. So is there anything good? Because this sequence starts there and it ends with them deciding that they have to go to Wakanda.
Yeah, well, there's something I really, really liked because I don't want to say an argument between Vision and Scarlet Witch, but when they're having like this back and forth, and it cuts to Cap for a while
Yeah,
when
where
he's
he-
like just staring at them.
he's contemplating it.
He's contemplating, but it also makes me think. I wonder if he's thinking about looking at their relationship and him thinking about maybe his relationship with Peggy Carter.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought about that.
Well, it's
but-
possible. I mean, I love those reaction shots of Chris
Yeah.
Evans in that scene. He is, Vision is putting forth a sacrifice play.
Mm-hmm.
We know Steve Rogers loves a sacrifice play. We also know he only loves it if it's him or if it's going to be Tony Stark because that guy's a dick.
I like how Cap didn't have an answer because Vision was like, well, what's the difference when you do
Right.
it and when I do it? Cap didn't have an answer. He was luckily cut off by Banner.
Yeah, and well, I mean that is also though when he introduces the we don't trade lives line too.
Yeah.
Cap isn't like he's conflicted. He logically understands it, emotionally doesn't. I think that's really what's going on there. But also because it is a couple and there is a hole
Yeah.
in Rogers' heart.
'Cause that's what I got
But
from it.
I have a question for you during the awkward scene. Do you think that Black Widow and Captain America have hooked up?
No.
No.
No? You don't think so?
What makes you
You
say
don't think
that?
so?
No.
I don't know. Like I read this thing when Falcon says awkward, and then just based on their flirtations from Winter Soldier, and now they've been 2 years together out in the field.
I never really picked up on that. I just think because there's so much time that's gone by. And that's another one of my nitpicks, which is not really a bad thing, but a nitpick. I wanted to see more of
I
that
love that you
reunion
don't.
between Black Widow and Hulk.
So
or
much is
Banner.
withheld in this film.
I hope we get more in Avengers 4
I think
because
you will. I think you will.
I really wanted to see more with that because I love what they established with them in Age of Ultron. I mean, I like that look between
This is
the
what's
two
going to
of them.
happen in Avengers 4. Natasha, we need to get together. I'm sorry, I've been with Steve.
I love that you've introduced this element. I did not pick up on it at all, and I think that it's just your fantasy, but I love it. I love that idea.
What I got from that Falcon saying
It's what
awkward
happened.
was
It's what
it's just the way that Banner that exchange, like Banner, that was it was awkward the way he
Sure, and it's also awkward because Falcon knows that that Nat and Steve have been hooking up.
Yeah,
I buy in. I buy into.
Where's
Brad's
Sharon
narrative.
Carter, people? Where's Sharon Carter? He left her on the line.
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
But I love how that scene ends. Oh man, like look at Silvestri's score. Like when it's on Cap and they're saying like I forget what somebody said. He's like I know where we can go.
Oh, because
And
they say that that's when Banner says it might be possible. He says, Vision, you have a choice because it might be possible to separate you from the stone.
Yeah,
because you have so much more.
Yeah, there's a little bit of Jarvis, a little bit of Stark, a little bit of him, the stone, and everything that's inside of him. So there's a possibility that if we remove the stone, there can still be something that we can keep of Vision.
Yeah,
that
we
will
just
keep
need a
him
bigger
alive.
brain than Banner.
And Banner says, I can't do it. But then Steve says, I think I know someone who can.
I know someone.
And that's
And
when
then you hear that. And it's just like when you start hearing that, I'm like, oh, it's like coming back home. It was awesome. I love that.
So then we cut to Wakanda and we see T'Challa and Okoye walking across the field and they're approaching Bucky.
The White Wolf.
They present the White Wolf with a new arm.
I love that new arm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Badass.
That's
Bucky
awesome.
says, where's the fight? And T'Challa says, on the way.
It's on the way.
So then we get to, we catch back up with Rocket and Thor as they reach.
Never Delir.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
And so this sequence starts with them arriving there, and also we're introduced to the giant dwarf played by
Peter Dinklage.
Before we get there, that scene between Rocket and Thor, which is one of my favorite scenes, because I love that when Rocket says, "Well, it's time for me to be a captain,"
And again, that's picking up of the lessons that he learned from Yondu in Volume 2.
and that's what I was going to say because it just feels like it's picking up from all that stuff that happened in Volume 2 and the growth of Rocket's character, and then like when he has that conversation with Thor and Chris Hemsworth in this scene. Again, some of the performances and some of these interactions, these quieter moments between characters, I thought was just brilliant. And like seeing Thor kind of break down, but still trying to maintain kind of like that ego, that manliness, but realizing like everybody that he's lost his father, his brother, his best friend, his planet, his home. It was just such a heartbreaking scene because then towards the end he says, "There's nothing else for me to lose."
Yeah, but also when he's like, "Look, I'm 1,500 years old.
Yeah.
I've killed 3,000 people. You know, the only reason I'm alive is because fate has willed it.
Yeah.
You know, so we're gonna go get this magical weapon, and yeah, I'm gonna win because that's what I do.
Yeah.
You know,
I love that scene.
I
between
think
him
this
and Rocket.
scene was like the perfect balance of the Thor we know and Ragnarok Thor.
agreed.
Because that moment of like, you know, like the first time Rocket asked, like, do you think that you're ready for this fight? And the expression on his face of being like, yeah, I'm ready to go. All of these things are great motivators. Like that could be plucked right from Ragnarok, but because of this context of the magnitude of this fight, it has that emotional weight that we were missing in Ragnarok.
Right.
It was a perfect moment.
And then,
Love that
you know,
scene.
going to Neville Delir, the idea that this is a place where god killers are made, right? And he's like, well, we should all have god killers, right? We all need god killers. He's like, yeah, but you know what? You'd be driven crazy if you held this thing. You're not worthy, one. And also, even if you were, you'd lose your mind.
I don't know why I found that line so funny to me. That it'd crush you under the weight and you do something, fall into madness or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought that was so funny.
I love Rocket going like, well, I want to do it even more now.
Yeah.
But again, it's putting Thor on another playing field than other characters.
Exactly. And again, it ends on a comedic beat when he said, when Rocket's like, well, I got a lot to lose.
Yeah, and it's all building the audience up to like, don't worry, Thor's coming, guys. He'll rescue the day.
And so after that, that's when Rocket presents Thor with the eyeball.
Yeah.
Because
Up his ass.
Yeah, because that leads to Thor saying, oh, you know, this eye doesn't work. Everything looks dark. And Rocket's like, no, it's not the eye. That whole realm,
At
whatever.
first, I thought it was another shit joke.
No. Yeah, at first I did too, but then on second watch,
same.
I was like, no, it's just because
took the
everything's
second
dim
watch.
here. Yeah.
I was like, well, they're really laying thick on this Christopher Walken humor.
Yeah.
That's probably another nitpick. That eye thing, just I don't know, man.
You're sad because he just lost the eye. Now he's got the eye
Well,
back.
yeah, but then
not the eye
I'm
back,
thinking practical. Like when Hela like ripped the eye out, there should be like a gash, like a hole there. But it's just like he still has his
precise.
eyelid.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
She has little dainty lady fingers.
Yeah.
If I were to pluck out your eye, it would be clean. Soup's clean.
All right, so let's go around and talk about the good, each of our good with this particular sequence, because again, this is when we meet the dwarf played by Tyrion Lannister.
Yeah.
It's freaking dope. And
that gets a massive reaction when people
every time.
realize that that's Peter Dinklage.
Yeah. So this sequence, because I happen to like this sequence in regards to just how Thor interacts with the dwarf, but also that scene prior between he and Rocket, when Thor basically lays everything out. I've lost everything. Like what you said, Brad, Thor's still feeling like, well, fate had something to do with me still being here after every encounter that I've had. So after losing everything, to me, it just says a lot about his character, that he's still pressing forward. And regardless of if I lost everyone near and dear to me, and if I lost my Mjolnir, I'm still gonna,
He's
press
not
forward.
a moper.
No,
he
he's
doesn't
not.
go and like drown his sorrows in mead.
Yeah, and I appreciate
Mead
that.
is for celebration.
Ah, yes, that's right. So let's talk about that sequence when they have to reignite the fires to forge Stormbreaker.
Yeah, I love the way he says Stormbreaker. It's awesome. But yeah, and just hearing some of his backstory as far as like him forging the gauntlet for Thanos and killing all of his people except him, and basically burning his hand, or like sealing his hands.
You got the man with the iron fist.
Yeah,
going on
basically that he can't really build or forge any other weapons. So I like all of that backstory with his character, but then being able to have to reignite the dying star and all that stuff between Rocket and Thor, and what he has to do to be able to reignite that star, I thought was great. I love when he calls him Sweet Rabbit. I love that. I love how he calls him Rabbit every time, and it's so genuine when he said. It's not like
And Rocket
It's like, what?
takes
He
it
takes it.
because
Doesn't correct him, yeah.
Thor is a pirate angel.
He's not Quill. Like Quill can't call him a rabbit.
Exactly. But when Quill does it, he does it to kind of spite or to like say it in a demeaning manner. But like Thor doesn't know any better, and like Rocket just goes with it. And I think also Rocket kind of looks up to Thor.
Rocket loves Thor.
he
That's why
does.
he volunteered to go with him. Yeah, he wanted to see
Yeah.
this place that makes murder weapons, but okay, this is a man. I want to
This is
ride.
a winner.
I want to ride with this guy.
This is a winner.
Yeah. So I don't know. So that any good regarding this particular sequence, Lisa, when they're on the unpronounceable place?
I enjoyed Peter Dinklage's performance. I thought he was like kind of doing like a little voice thing, but I dug
Yeah,
it.
I think did they modulate?
I think they made his voice a little
Yeah.
deeper.
Deeper.
No, I think
Yeah.
he was doing it.
He
with
was
his own
doing
voice.
it
awesome.
too.
Probably.
It's awesome.
Probably.
I like that exchange. That was also like a little bit of Ragnarok Thor, but also just an insight into Thor's perspective of, like, this star is going to kill you. Well, only if I die. Like, it'll only kill me if I die. And we saw in the previous scene that he kind of has this confidence that he won't die because he does have like this kind of fate thing going on. But also, like, if I die, kind of, so what?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And also, I love the kind of character turn for Teen Groot.
Yes.
Where
yeah.
That's right.
where I think
Yes.
that, this is like he sees Thor and he sees that Thor might die and it scares him. Mortality scares him.
Watching it on repeats, all the cutaways to Groot watching Thor from his introduction on. Like, Groot doesn't give a shit about the Guardians, his parents. He does not care. But like Rocket and like Drax, the presence of Thor is unique, interesting, mesmerizing. And when he sees that opportunity, when Groot sees that
That's
opportunity,
interesting. Because I never noticed that with Groot. Because every time, normally when I see him up until that moment, he's got his head in that defender's.
But that's
game.
what I love about that moment. It shows that he's been paying attention.
But yes, he has that game in. But watch it again.
Yeah.
Watch Groot's reactions to Thor.
He really admires him.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
like that, like there's the eye sequence when he's putting the eye in because he's like, "What this guy? This guy's gonna put this eye back in." But just from his introduction, the animation on Groot's face is like, "What is this?"
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when Groot does bring the new axe together, Stormbreaker together, and makes that arm handle.
Yeah,
I think that just goes to show that even though this is a new Groot, this is a completely different person. He does have some of that insight and some of those values that I just think come with being a Groot.
Yeah.
He realizes he has something to give. He has a specific gift. He is the giving tree. Yeah. Take my arm, please.
My apologies. I skipped over the part where this movie there's a lot of shit going on, so you got to forgive me. We skipped over the part when Tony and Peter rescue Doctor Strange.
Well, okay. I just want to say one more thing about the Neville Delir sequence.
Yeah.
Because that is really two sequences. Because we don't come back to the Stormbreaker being formed until the middle of the battle of Wakanda, right? But again, this idea that Neville Delir is where Thanos went to get the gauntlet, how it is just putting, I keep saying this, putting on the same field, the Thanos' gauntlet, Stormbreaker, right? And when Thor jumpstarts the sphere, Rocket's, like, what are you doing? You just got a rope? And you're in space, dude. You can't do anything.
Yeah.
You can't move it out there in space.
Yeah.
And then, boom, God happening. So, like, there's so much awesome Thor building in Infinity War.
That was when I don't know why that was the moment, but when Thor swings the spaceship and he launches it, he tells Rocket to hit it. Rocket punches it, and then Thor he's being dragged and he's grabbing. That was the moment where I was like, is Thor my favorite Avenger? Because this motherfucker is making shit happen. Like, this dude is
it makes
amazing.
sense, too, because then back on Earth, with the original group, Thor and Hulk, it's why they're in Ragnarok together. They're a perfect pair.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the only ones that can, duke it out together.
Yeah.
So, it was that moment that I was like, damn, I think Thor's my favorite Avenger now.
And
awesome.
if we're talking Stormbreaker, comic book wise, Stormbreaker is the axe that Odin built for Beta Ray Bill.
Yes.
We've seen Beta Ray Bill's profile on Ragnarok in statue. Beta Ray Bill's got to come, right?
Gotta be coming,
right.
man.
That's how you replace Thor.
Yeah. Oh my god, I would be so happy that day. All right, so let's
double
back a little bit to that sequence where Peter and Tony rescue Doctor Strange from Maul.
Yeah, because they're on the ship and Maul is basically torturing him with these.
And that was a sequence that had given you some concern in the previews.
Well, yeah, because it was just seeing what Maul was doing to Doctor Strange. And Doctor Strange, again, he's probably one of my favorite characters in this film. I love his arc in this film. But going to your point, having Peter Parker and Tony Stark save him in that way, and again, a callback to Parker's pop culture references. Have you seen that old movie Aliens?
Yeah.
And it works.
Both times.
Yeah. So it works. So I thought that was pretty cool the way they were able to take out Maul, using the ingenuity of Peter Parker's
And
pop culture
the
reference.
shot of the Maw flying into space is the exact shot of Aliens.
Yep.
Of the Queen going into space.
Yep.
Oh, interesting. Nice.
White Dork, anything about this sequence on your good list?
Are we talking about
When
Peter's being shooting Ma into space?
Yeah.
Or we're talking?
That whole sequence.
Because that culminates with a conversation between Tony and Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange, he doing another callback line. If it comes down to between you and that kid and the stone, I won't hesitate to.
Is this the
Yes, it
scene
is.
in
It
which?
is.
Oh,
Do
okay.
it.
I love that moment when Tony Stark kind of knights Peter and makes him an Avenger, and for Tony, it's like kind of like half a joke. Like, like you're here, like whatever.
Not to Peter.
Yeah, and he just kind of half a joke goes like, okay, you're an Avenger now. But the expression on Tom Holland's face, like just this wave of emotions of like, oh, I am so flattered and excited. Oh shit. This is going to be really fucking dangerous. I can handle it because I'm an Avenger. Is so beautiful. And then within the context of this story, I think this movie keeps re-emphasizing like Spider-Man is a child.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And Tony knows that and ignores it in such a way like, like he tried to get Peter Parker off of the ship.
Yeah.
And getting Peter Parker off of the ship is the right thing to do. Aunt May must be losing her goddamn shit.
Yeah.
No amount of larb is going to make this right.
Aunt May's dust in the wind right now.
She might be one of the ones that survives.
Let's hope so. Let's hope that she's dust in the wind.
Damn.
No, here's why. Like this goes back to Lisa's tragic attitude, where I'm just like, I can't handle it. Dust me. I'm like, I want to go with the first half. I want to be dusted right away. But like, how is she going to survive? Uncle Ben is dead. Peter Parker is disappeared / dusted. Like, if I was Aunt May, just fucking take me, Thanos. Take me! But what was my point? Oh, yeah, that
He's a kid.
Peter Parker's story is so tragic.
It is.
And it just highlights the fact that, like, Spider-Man has no business in space. He like physically he can handle it. Oh, and also the fucking iron spider legs
that's what I want to
is
talk
the
about.
shit.
Yeah, that was cool.
Sorry, Brad.
So great. No, that's great.
cool.
Talk about it.
That moment is amazing when they first pop out. Like,
What are those?
Yeah.
like it's like I squeed. I was so excited.
That was cool.
So badass.
See that.
And then the fact that they. Like, the suit is so intuitive, and it's just acting out all of this kid's desires, essentially, like, oh, I want to stay on this ship. The suit's going to make it happen, like the fact that we kind of get to see all of the different things that how handy these fucking spider legs are.
Yeah, and the only thing I would say is that he's the one, thanks to movies, watch more movies, people.
Yeah.
He takes down this crazy alien psychic mystic creature.
Yeah.
And in battle, even up against Thanos, he's capable.
Right.
But he's a child.
Yeah.
And as that builds to his end, I mean, it really is like
I
Lisa
think that's
says,
the greatest
brutal.
and best thing that the MCU has done for that character is
Oh,
to
yeah.
continually reiterate
Yeah.
Parker's
That he's a
age.
kid.
Yeah, I think that's the most profound thing that they've done with that character, because it makes his last moment the most heartbreaking.
We'll get to that.
But before we get to that, so after this sequence, I want to say we fall back in line with everything we talked about, but we eventually get the sequence where Cap and everyone finally arrive at Wakanda.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that sequence, because if I'm not mistaken, that begins with them landing.
Yeah.
Bowing to the king.
Yeah, they introduce Bucky and Cap reunite.
That Sebastian Stan smile, that's the stuff of Tumblr, man.
Yeah, and I want to say the sequence concludes with them the invading forces arriving, and then get this man a shield. That I want to say that's the conclusion of.
Yeah,
It's
we
hard to keep it all
We get the moment with Shuri.
Yes.
well, because right, yeah, you get the moment with Shuri.
because they're trying to get the stone out and trying to figure it out. And again, because everybody says we want to see, because Shuri is one of the smartest people in the MCU.
Before this though, we do get Nebula. Before.
That's right, because we have everything on Vortimir with the Soul Stone. Because we haven't talked about because he's torturing Nebula, Thanos is, and we have that whole scene between Thanos and Gamora about how she can't lie, and this whole thing you were talking about finite resources.
Yeah,
and then we get into the whole thing with Nebula.
And Lisa made an interesting point about just Nebula's introduction in this film, seeing her all splayed out.
Oh man.
Oh, it's terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely. They do that thing where there's these games, these puzzle games that you have these seemingly random shapes or blocks, and you have to manipulate the blocks to cast a shadow of something that is recognizable. And when you look at the blocks from the wrong angle, they look separated. But when you adjust your vantage point, you know, you don't move the blocks, you just move your vantage point, and then it puts together the shapes. And they did something really interesting visually with Nebula in that way. And so, but again, that, you know, that is terrifying with what Thanos is doing to her.
Well, not just the fact that she's all spaghettied out and all of her parts are laid out, the fact that we can see through her and there is no person left. When Nebula was picked up, right, we know from the previous films, she was like a flesh and blood alien, just like Gamora. But every time she would lose a fight to Gamora, Thanos would replace a part. Now we see that there is no flesh in her. Every single part of her is replaced. And I think that is so tremendously sad, especially considering when we first met Nebula as a character, she was such like a throwaway person, and now like she has evolved to this completely tragic character, and really just the embodiment of what a monster Thanos is.
And he just doesn't care. He doesn't care anything about.
He has no respect for her.
The amount he loves Gamora, he does not give a shit about Nebula, and
all.
it is so
It's devastating.
cruel.
Yeah,
it is so cruel.
So it's this particular scene where Gamora reveals to Thanos the location of the Soul Stone.
People are just giving up those stones for each other, right and left. And is that the right choice? I don't know.
yeah.
And so is there anything you want to talk about this particular as far as good?
I mean, I love all that stuff because again, before our first screening, me and Brad were talking about the whole thing between Gamora and Nebula, where I thought Nebula was going to be one that was going to go, but it seems like they kind of
I don't know. Can Nebula even die at this point?
Yeah, at this point, you're right. But I knew that relationship between the two of those characters was going to be pivotal at some point. And it is to the point where Gamora does give up where the Soul Stone is for the love of her sister, that she doesn't want to see her get basically torn apart. Because at this point, like, Thanos doesn't give a shit about Nebula.
Yeah.
So he's basically just using her to get information out of Gamora.
Yeah.
Another little nitpick, but doesn't take away of anything, is the fact that message that we see as far as like Gamora saying where the Soul Stone is, like the map to the Soul Stone, where, because we never really established that in every other point, so that almost feels, I don't want to say it feels kind of forced, but
I mean it's certainly, you know, they got to they're pushing the screenplay forward.
Yeah,
it's
which
not the most
I get
smooth method, but
yeah, it's not the best way to do it, but I understand why they had to do that.
They just needed to put Gamora into a corner. And they did.
And yeah, they were able to do that. So it doesn't take away from anything in the story, but it's just something I kind of noticed. But yeah, I love all that stuff between them as sisters.
Lisa, anything you wanted to add as far as good for that sequence before we move on?
No, I just think it's beautiful. The moment Gamora touches her sister's cheek is stunning.
Oh, yeah.
What about you, B?
I love the design of that Chitauri surgeon character.
Oh yeah.
But no, let's get to Vormir.
One last thing about that sequence, Lisa, what you said about having Nebula all stretched
Laid out.
and no semblance of human or a live being in there anymore. In spite of all that, what we would come to learn later on is that Nebula still does have a heart, in that she has feelings for her sister. She still cares.
That's what's so beautiful about her as a character.
Yeah.
The fact that she is so sensitive.
Yeah.
You know, like she loves her sister, but also she has insecurities and all of that
anger.
stuff.
So she has a lot of the personality
She's
traits of a human.
extraordinarily human.
Complex, yeah. So I think that's really interesting. All right, so Brad, you said you want to get to
Yeah, get the Vormir.
Vormir.
All right,
Let's get there.
So let's talk about Vormir. Let's talk about the good in this sequence. So this sequence starts with a beautiful wide shot of the landscape where you have these dunes mixed with like water.
Thanos as Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah, it's almost like a Sahara desert. It looks
with
it's
water
beautiful.
in between the dunes.
It's beautiful.
Beautiful. So they take a wormhole there using the space stone.
Yeah.
And they come upon. So what they have to do, they have to go up to the top of this structure, and that's where the Soul Stone is hidden. Before they do that, at the gates of this location, they meet a gatekeeper, so to speak. And it is, I think this is one of the first surprises of the film.
Yeah.
It blew my mind.
Yeah.
I made a physical sound. I've never done that
Me
in
too.
a movie where I was just like, what?
I know the people sitting next to me during the first screening, because when Red Skull, spoiler,
Yeah.
it was Red Skull. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I literally jumped out of my seat and planted my knees on the seat. I
yeah,
sat.
Brad was full fetal.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I was. When we talked about it again on like our Phase 3 cast, we were saying like, Red Skull's never coming back, guys. It would be great. I was like, oh, maybe in Phase 4.
Yeah.
And then to see him as the guardian of the Soul Stone, cursed to bring travelers to it without any actual possibility of accessing it.
Yeah.
I was like, all right.
He has to watch someone else possibly attain the thing that
Yeah.
he had set out to come get.
This is a
Because
pretty
he
good
doesn't-
damnation for this mother.
Oh yeah.
Because he doesn't have the one thing that Thanos has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this sequence ends with something that we have been referencing all throughout this podcast and earlier. Again, with the most devastating death of the movie for me, because it was so unexpected. And so Thanos gets to the top of this the
cliff or the
cliff
structure,
or whatever
yeah.
the structure, yeah. And Red Skull informs him that the key to obtaining the Soul Stone is you have to provide a sacrifice. You have to sacrifice something you love. So in this moment, like on my first watch, when he says that, like my stomach dropped because I was like, "Oh shit, Gamora's gone," and I was not expecting that. And even telling myself that before they showed it did not help when to see it actually happen.
Right.
And I love that happened. But let's go around robin and talk about the good in this particular sequence.
It's wild because that whole sequence, especially the second time I watch it, because when Red Skull says that and you see the Thanos' face in that moment, and then it cuts to Gamora and she almost kind of laughs it off.
Yeah.
And when she laughs it off, you're like, "Fuck, man!" It's like you already know what's coming,
Yep.
but she doesn't realize it. She doesn't realize it, and she gives a great speech where she says, it's like after all the genocide, all the torture that you've done in the universe, like the universe has turned its back on you because there's nothing in this world that you truly love.
No. It did that to Red Skull. But not to Thanos.
Not to Thanos. And then like when he turns to her and he's like, and then she realizes and she's like, no, he's like, you never really loved me. And he realized that it is her. And that line that Thanos says, he's like, I ignored my destiny once. I can't allow myself, I can't do this again.
Not even for you.
Not even for you. And it's such a devastating moment. And a moment I just couldn't believe.
Well, and then Red Skull's lines are like, those tears aren't for you.
Yeah.
Because Red Skull knows exactly what's going on.
Yep.
It was devastating. It's devastating to see.
What about you, Lisa? I know there's, as far as good in the sequence of tragedy, Wood.
I love that when she realizes, oh my God, Thanos does love me. And someone who is capable of such horror and monstrousness, is also capable of loving, like just seems impossible. But when she realizes, oh my God, he does love me and he's going to sacrifice me, she tries to kill herself.
That's right. Yeah.
She is a fucking hero. She
her.
goes like, well, I can't let you have this, so I'm going to make the sacrifice play, and she can't. Like, part of me goes like, what if she had just run off the cliff herself? I don't know.
He would have stopped her.
He would have stopped her and then just been like, push!
Yeah.
I don't know. But I love the fact that this entire time, Like, she is willing to die to save the universe, just like Vision is.
Mm-hmm.
But she doesn't have all of these assholes getting in the way. The one asshole getting in the way is Thanos.
Yeah, her father.
The biggest asshole. Yeah. We all agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and then when she falls, she has like this halo of green blood.
Yep.
So fucking. And there's like several moments in this movie where there's one moment where she is standing in front of Thanos. This is back on Nevedalir. No, not Nevedalir.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
so proud that I could say it, but that's not the right place. On Nowhere, where she's standing in front of Thanos, and she's like looking down, and her hair is falling around her, and she looks like the Madonna. She looks like Mary to me. I'm just like, yeah. So going back forward, like the fact that she is presented in this kind of saintly way, I just really enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, B?
Just going back to Red Skull explaining the special wisdom of the soul gem. It's unlike any of the other Infinity Stones. It has a will of its own. And, you know, in the context of comic book lore, and maybe even suggest at the end of this film, there is a possibility of how to get Gamora back.
Right.
Well, where they decide to go with that plot, we'll just have to wait and see. I feel like she's coming back. I don't see James Gunn wanting to make a movie without that central relationship in Guardians Volume 3.
Yeah.
And because of what we see at the end of this film, I have a pretty good idea she's going to be back.
Well, I have a question once we get to the end about all that. But another thing that I wanted to mention too with this scene and the character of Gamora. Now, you could probably speak more to this than me because you're more the comic book reader. I don't read comics that much, but I know a little bit of these characters. That whole idea that a lot of people were thinking that Thanos' motivation for all of this was going to be Lady Death, Hela for the MCU, but that didn't seem to be the case. So for me, I kind of picked up, or at least what my interpretation was, that it looks like they kind of switched that around, and instead of him having a love for Death, it was really the love of Gamora, or putting Gamora in.
Well,
that,
I mean,
in
Death
that
is a
place.
motivating factor in the comics, and we have not seen a motivating factor like that. Now, could this film go forward, and we'll have further conversations in Soul World with Gamora? Definitely possible.
Yeah.
But I also think Gamora can walk out of Soul World in some fashion.
Yeah.
And you know, when Gamora dies in this movie and the sky opens up and there's the Flash and you know, Soul World opens up is how I interpret that in this film.
Okay.
He wakes up in the waters.
Yeah.
Now, are those the waters that we saw earlier on Vormir, and he just wakes up with that in his hand, or is he in Soul World at that moment?
Okay.
I'm debating that myself.
Okay.
But I mean, I feel like the way I interpret that sky opening up, that Soul World opening up, that is a realm that people can travel to, and that's a realm that people have traveled to. Specifically, Gamora has lived in Soul World with Adam Warlock for many years, and she has walked out of Soul World in the comic books. So something like that could happen again.
Okay.
What do we think about Ross Marquand
As
taking
Red
the
Skull,
places
that was friggin'
of
dope.
Hugo Weaving?
I love it.
I love that, and I love the fact that they tap someone who is an impressionist.
Yeah, he's an impressionist.
He's
He does
a great
he's a great impressionist.
Can I tell you something right now? I thought that was Hugo Weaving until
too.
Lisa just said that. No,
Oh,
right
serious?
till this
Oh,
moment.
to the-
that
no.
wasn't Hugo Weaving?
No,
No.
because he has a
No.
completely different face. Like
He
you-
looked like Red Skull to me.
Yeah, but we all know. Remember, Hugo Weaver
I
said
remember
he
him
never,
saying that,
he
and I
never
remember
wanted to
watching the
come
movie.
back.
I'm like, well, they gave him enough money.
That's the same thing I thought too. Until after the screening, I heard that it was Ross Marquand.
I
was like,
literally did not know that until Lisa said those words this very second.
Like
Yeah.
I know that Ross, like I'm looking at his IMDb and I realize he's done a ton of acting, but I've just heard him on podcasts doing his like
Me
he
too.
likes to do like 1 second
That's the
impressions.
dude that you were
Yeah.
showing me of that was doing the Hugo Weaving voice before on your podcast.
I don't know. I probably played him for you. I mean,
think so.
it's
And
so
he was
funny.
he was
was
on
in
the
Walking Dead.
He was on the
He was
Walking
Walking Dead.
Dead.
I don't watch that
He does
shit.
a
No, I
mean
know.
Christopher Walken.
Yeah, he does a lot of impressions.
Yeah.
He's
Well,
really
I mean,
good.
I did notice that his face they gave him more of the cheekbone skull face, which I love.
Yeah, appreciate that too.
Yeah.
McFarlane-esque.
So after to conclude this particular sequence, as you mentioned, Brad, Thanos does acquire the Soul Stone, and so now he must make his way to Titan. We cut back to Nebula as she breaks free from her. She
just tricks him.
She's reassembled.
Right.
Yeah, she knocks the guy out. She gets on a communication device and she sends a message to
Calls
Mantis.
Mantis to meet at Titan.
Meet at Titan. So we get to Titan. Doctor Strange, Tony, and Peter have attempted to steer the ship, and they crash land on Titan.
I love that. Just an utter fail. I guess, like, as a foreshadowing for the rest of this movie.
So at this point, I want to say we're in the third act now, which in this movie...
The whole movie's third act.
This movie does not, and this kind of bothered me initially, this movie does not have a 3-act structure in your traditional fashion.
Yeah.
Right. But I would say if there were a 3-act structure to this film, this would be the third act, because from this point on, we're going to be on Titan, and then we're also going to be back on Earth at Wakanda. So we're going to be switching between the two.
Yeah, and Never to Lear.
In that place until Thor gets back.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. So the ship lands, and this is when the Guardians, or Peter, Drax, and Mantis first encounter Tony and Peter and Doctor Strange.
Which is
fun.
Yeah, which is a great little action sequence.
So let's talk about that sequence. Let's talk about the good.
I mean, just seeing Star-Lord and Iron Man kind of fight each other a little bit, and then you got Peter Parker in there and Doctor Strange, and then when they kind of have the Mexican standoff, and one of my favorite, which was going to be my second quote, when they think that he's with Thanos, and they say he's like, "Where's Gamora?" And then Tony's like, "Who is Gamora?" He's like, "I'll do one better. Who is Gamora?" And then the line I love, Drax is like, "I could do you one better. Why is Gamora?"
That kills every time. That killed every time.
That's one of my favorite lines. I thought it was absolutely
Drax
fantastic.
is just the fucking
And he's
best.
so
Do we
sincere and
agree?
earnest when he's saying that shit too. Like, he really thought he was adding to the conversation. The one thing I love about it is I don't even think it's in this sequence when it's out when they're outside, and
he does the yawn.
He says that when they say that, when he and Mantis say that we're taking ass and kicking names.
Yeah.
Tony, for the first time, he can't say anything. He's just like, you know what? All right, whatever.
And that gets such a big laugh.
He makes a face
He seems so defeated.
that reminds me, like Trauma Trigger reminds me of when he peed in the Iron Man suit. I'm like, seriously, is he taking a piss right now? But then he was just making an expression. But there's something about the way that he's like rolling his eyes and looking completely blank that just like goes like he's peeing right now.
He's just so done with all of these characters.
I love for the fact that these people, for the first time, Tony is not firing back like with a quick.
Yeah, he's literally stuck.
It's pointless. Yeah,
he's stuck.
I love that.
Yeah, like I said, in that whole scene where he's trying to do the plan, and he looks at Drax and he's yawning. He's like, "Are you seriously yawning right now?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, I tuned out when you said I have a plan.
Well, and I love Peter saying like, not doing it spur of the moment is not what they do.
Yeah. So yeah, that was great just to see them interact together.
So this sequence also, I want to say, isn't there another exchange between Strange and Tony?
Well, this is when they're doing the plan, we see Strange going into using the time stone to go into time to see all the possible outcomes.
If I had the time stone, I'd be using that shit all of the time. Like, why isn't he just constantly
because of the
like
end
going
of Doctor
like,
Strange.
Zip, zip, zip.
Because you can't mess with time. I mean,
It's an emergency, Brad. Gamora is dead.
Well, guess what? I hate to break the news to you. He did mess with time, and he got the answer he wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 14,605 different outcomes.
I thought it was 1400,606.
No, it was 5.
5. Yeah.
Whatever, guys.
Because I was annoyed that it came out to a 5. I'm like, seriously, you couldn't think of a more interesting number than 5?
But and Tony asked him, was like, "Well, how many did we win?" And he says, "Only 1."
I was sitting next to your brother Mike, and he is a theater talker. Zach, I love you. Zach and Mike, total theater talkers. This is this could have been my quote because I loved it so much because like in that moment, like where it's just like there are, 4,605,000 and how many did we win? Mike goes 0. And then 1 second later, Dr. Strange goes 1. And I'm like, fucking asshole. I just loved it. I just thought, I just wanted to reach my arms around and hug Mike.
What I loved about that Thursday watch, and actually the Thursday, Friday, Saturday watches, not today, was how the audience had to react and interact with the film. And I felt like the interaction with those three crowds was never negative. Like the people who show up for those first showings, they fought Fandango to get there. And they're loving and being brutalized by every moment in this movie.
Yeah. So after we cut away from that sequence when Doctor Strange tells Tony of the probability of their situation, I want to say we cut back to Wakanda, and the attack is about to commence because the ships have sent down those large triangular structures with housing all those monsters, which kicks off the final battle. I want to say. So let's talk about that sequence because that's when we get M'Baku returns.
Yeah,
I love that.
I love M'Baku. He's so awesome.
Yeah, and so his army, all the Dora Milaje, they come out and I want to say no, Scarlet Witch she hasn't come out yet. But let's
Hulk shows up or Banner shows up in the Hulkbuster.
Yeah, I mean, when those ships come down that have, what are those creatures called again?
Outriders.
The Outriders, yeah, because I know that one hits the top of the dome, and I love Bucky's response. It's like, I love this place. And but I think it's Black Panther, Cap, and Black Widow walk to the edge of the dome, and Proxima Midnight is there, and they have this conversation. And I forget what they say, but I do remember Proxima Midnight says, well, we have plenty of blood to spare. And then that's when all the Outriders start to come out.
Yeah, T'Challa says, tell Thanos all he's going to find here is dust and blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true.
Dust in the wind.
Oh, God.
But that sequence I love because when the Outriders are like rushing and towards the force field and they start to kind of break through and then their bodies are being chopped up.
Very xenomorph up there.
Yeah, and they're killing themselves and then they start to surround because I forget who says it. They're like, if they surround the border, they'll be able to get to Vision.
Banner, yeah.
Banner says
and it's like, okay, then T'Challa's like, look, we're going to have to open up the border. And it's like, oh shit, it's going down. It's like, here we go.
And M'Baku is like, this is the end of Wakanda.
And then Okoye says, if it's the end, this will be the most noble ending in history.
And it still stays true to the Wakanda. Still stays true to the Wakandan way, which I love. And then they start that chant, that Bombay. I'm like, oh God, I love it. And then they start the charge, and another one of my crowd pleasing moments. And this is why I tell you, T'Challa and Cap, my two favorite characters. When they run ahead of everybody and they lead that charge. My God, that moment is... Yes, I love that moment. God, I love that moment.
Yeah. And Cap's got those new gauntlets.
Yes. Yes. It is awesome. Just when you see them run ahead. It's like those are the men you want to follow.
I wonder if Cap is ever a little disappointed that he's getting a shield again. He's just like, I wish someone would just give me a really cool gun.
They're not really shields. They're like stabbing gauntlets.
But even so, how about one of those fucking zappy spears? I would like a zappy spear. They're like, get this man a shield.
Can I get a zappy shield then?
Zappy shield?
Can we meet halfway?
I even like one of those cool blanket shields. And then with a stabby zappy spear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool, man. Even
I guess when you're a guest, you can't be like.
Even before all that happens, just seeing War Machine where he drops the bombs at the border to kill.
Don't get your wings singed,
Falcon.
Falcon.
Yeah, I like Rhodey's and Falcon's relationship because you can see there's something, and we'll get to that.
Because they're two military dudes. There's camaraderie there.
Yeah.
So we cut. So as I mentioned previously, we're going to be cutting back. With the film's going to be cutting back from this moment to Neverlear, and then also to Titan. So we cut back to on Neverlear to that sequence that we spoke about with Thor getting the handle put on Stormbreaker from Groot. And so it goes from that to we stop back Titan one more time. Because after Titan, that's when you get the Thor coming down to Wakanda.
Because on Titan, I think this is big too. Well, we've already really established as far as like Thanos and what his motivation is, but I liked the exposition where he uses the Reality Stone to show what Titan used to be when he has that conversation with Doctor Strange, where he talks about, there were so many mouths and, he had to commit mass genocide on his own planet to try to, preserve it. And I just loved all that whole sequence between him and Doctor Strange, that conversation that they were having.
The confrontation on Titan that's my favorite stuff as far as action wise in the film. Not specifically, but all of the stuff that Star-Lord's doing, Peter and the Iron Spider are coming through the holes,
all the
stuff
portal
like that,
usage,
all the portals. But more specifically, when Doctor Strange and Thanos are going at it, he's taking the stuff that Doctor Strange is throwing at him, creating like dark energy.
He takes the reality dimension and turns it into a black hole and throws it at him.
It's freaking
So good.
so badass.
And then Doctor Strange turns that black hole into butterflies.
So.
I like it when Thanos uses he turns the ground into a carpet and pulls Doctor Strange to himself. Scary.
I mean, to me, that Doctor Strange moment is when he goes up and multiplies.
The audience loses their shit.
Yeah.
But then Thanos just flexes and busts all that shit up. It's amazing.
And it really just culminates in that moment between him and Star-Lord when Mantis comes through the portal to try to put Thanos to sleep because they have a plan to try to take the gauntlet off of his forearm. And so they do subdue him for a while, but Mantis says he's really strong, so you got to do this quick. And because she can feel their feelings, he's like, where's Gamora? And he's like, he mourns for her. And Nebula says it's like they went to Vormir for the Soul Stone. It's like he has the Soul Stone, but she never came back. And Peter's like, no, he's like, you're lying. And then and I get it. A lot of people that I've been hearing about are like, oh, Peter, why would you do this? There was a plan. I get the rage. Knowing that he killed the woman that he loved, it's just I get why he would react that way.
It's the same emotion why Tony Stark lashed out at Bucky and Cap at the end of Civil War.
Exactly.
It's uncontrollable.
Exactly. Especially in that moment. And they almost had the gauntlet. And Tony tries to tell him, he's like, look, don't focus. We almost got this thing off of him. But Quill just loses it.
Yeah. So the universe doesn't matter to me. The stakes of all this doesn't matter to me because my world, Gamora, is gone. So I
he's
don't
not
care
even
about
thinking.
any of this shit.
He's reacting.
Yeah. And so
absolutely.
I love that moment. Yeah. It's a tragic moment because that it's gonna net some negative results. But again, I understand why he's doing it. I probably would have did the same thing. So that's one of my favorite moments regarding Star-Lord.
Almost comes off. Peter almost has
it. Oh man. So this particular scene culminates, in my opinion, with the most badass display of power in the MCU when he fucking flexes, explodes that planet and hurls it towards them like that. That's just comic book right there to me. I love that moment. I love just the visualization of it, how Thanos is framed, how that shot is framed. You can see the planet, and then they cut to the surface of that planet exploding and coming to pieces, and then warping down to the. Oh man, it's so badass. But then we cut back to Wakanda, and we have some more fighting between Okoye, Scarlet Witch, and Black Widow.
Black Widow. They're fighting in Proxima Midnight in their little trench area because they bring up these rolling.
Those are from Transformers.
I know, right? from Battlefield.
Right? So we have some combat between them.
I mean, to see Proxima Midnight devastates Scarlet Witch or knocks her on her ass, and then to see Black Widow, human, partner up with Okoye, General, to take down Proxima Midnight, fight it out until Scarlet Witch can send her up into a razor blade.
And I love Okoye's line. She was like, she was up there the whole time.
Yeah. We also get a scene. For me, it was one I really enjoyed or found interesting character-wise is Banner and the Hulkbuster fighting. What's the big dude?
Call Obsidian.
Yeah, Call Obsidian, and he's again trying to
call the Hulk.
Get the Hulk. And which we didn't talk about in the first sequence earlier in New York when he was trying to summon the Hulk and couldn't do it.
We touched on it a little bit.
Yeah,
but I like that this allowed Banner to do something, be of some use and fight without the Hulk. But I also, again, that thing with the Hulk being scared to come out, I find that so fascinating and interesting. I really like that.
And again, I love how they're withholding that for the next film.
Yeah.
We'll see Hulk again.
Because that's the thing that gets me so excited, because once he gets his shit together, you know that's going to be epic. He's going to have another confrontation with Thanos.
It's going to. We talk about this in all the Avengers films, like the moment where he says "I'm always angry," or the moment when Vision picks up Mjolnir. It's just like, and then the moment that we're going to get to when Thor.
That was my question. Is that the moment?
I think in Avengers 4, when Hulk comes back, is going to be a moment like that.
But what's the moment in Avengers 3 that equals "I'm always angry" and Vision picking up Mjolnir?
I think is when Thor lands on Wakanda.
All right, so let's talk about that, because that's what we do. We cut back. Groot sacrifices his arm, forms the handle to Stormbreaker, and then the next thing you know, the Bifrost, which is pretty cool because what's the Peter Dinklage's dwarf name?
I can't remember.
Etir.
He mentions that it's legend or rumored that Stormbreaker could even summon the Bifrost, and sure enough, Thor uses that. When that happens, when he steps out of the light. Well, the audience lost their
Stormbreaker goes out of the light.
Yeah, the audience lost their shit.
That was the first screen of Thursday night. Like, that was the one time I literally sat up and clapped. I was like, because when the music hits and you see Rocket standing on Thor's shoulder and
badass.
Groot right there, and that Avengers theme cuts in. Yo. Yeah. I love it. I love it.
So this happens. He starts slinging Stormbreaker, and it starts decimating people. And that was that moment that I was like, yeah, Thor's my favorite Avenger.
Yeah.
I don't know how it happened, but I love it. He's my favorite Avenger.
Well, so it's not only that, right? They step out of the Bifrost. Rocket jumps out of the ground. Groot charges, and the three of them all charge into battle. And Thor flies up, and the shot, like where the sky darkens. Yeah. Lightning surrounds him, and then he comes down on those Outriders. Yep. I'm with you. Like, this is the Thor that the whole franchise has been building to.
Yeah, it's amazing.
This is the God killer.
Yeah. And the character interactions, which I think, again, callbacks to Cap and Thor. They haven't seen each other for a while. And I thought they were going to do another callback to the first Avengers. But the line doesn't make sense when they're fighting the Chitauri. And he's like, you getting sleepy. But I like that they get that interaction. And it's just a quick interaction where he's like, I see you cut your hair. It's like, yeah, I see you copying my beard. And it's just like Cap and Thor back together.
And then he's like, this is my friend, the tree.
Yeah, and then that line, I am Groot. It's like, I am Steve Rogers.
I love that. Such a genuine moment.
All right.
God knows what Groot actually said.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Who's going to bring up freaking Bucky holding up Rocket and then spinning around?
Apparently you are.
Come on, man. That shit was
because that's been a meme for like years, and I love that the Russos put the whole thing with the arm. He's like, "How much for that gun?" He's like, "Not for sale." What about the arm? He's like, "No." He's like, "Well, I'm gonna get that arm."
Yeah, so awesome. Yeah, so then we cut back to Titan, and so at this point, they fail in subduing Thanos, and he gets the time stone.
Well, let's just talk about that final confrontation between Tony and Thanos, right? When Thanos is like, Stark, he's like, "Oh shit, you know me?" He's like, "I'm also burdened with glorious knowledge."
Yeah, I thought that was
And that final beatdown. This is when I decided I loved the new nanotech armor. I wasn't sure if I really liked it compared to the previous Mark armors, but as he is having his suit ripped away from him,
Yeah.
and other parts of the suit are having to reform where necessary. So, he gets a repulsor ripped off of his glove. So then part of his leg comes up and turns into a sword.
It's like grafting skin.
Yeah, and so like slowly but surely, like the armor is moving up his body to the needed parts.
Yeah.
And then Thanos breaks off that nanotech sword and then guts
Right in
Tony,
the side.
stabs him right in the side,
Man.
and then the audience.
And the shot, how they're profiled, the silhouetted, and Tony's and Robert Downey Jr.'s performance in that moment sell that blow. That blow. When Robert Downey Jr. sits down and Thanos puts his hand on his shoulder and utters the line that
I hope they remember you.
Hope they remember you, or just
Yeah,
so you know,
you have my respect. Yeah.
half of the universe will still exist when I'm done.
Half of the humans will
Half the
still
humans,
exist.
yeah.
Because of this moment.
Thanos' face, as he's leaning in and he's talking to Tony, like the motion capture work that Josh Brolin is doing and that the VFX artist doing on that moment, impeccable. And so I that moment, man, I thought Tony was dead at that point.
Same.
Me too.
I was like,
Yeah,
oh wow, he's
yeah.
not coming back from that.
But Strange comes in.
Yep.
And he says, "I'll offer you the time stone to save his life." But I don't know, that makes me think, does that come down to that one
Yes,
outcome?
Yes.
100%.
Totally.
That's
This
the
is part
outcome.
of. So you know that because Strange later says, "Tony, this is the end game." And in chess, end game is when like the last few pieces are on the board.
Yeah.
This is all a game. This Strange to win had to give them the time stone.
Yeah.
And because he says, for me, it goes, it's a callback in a way to when he says, if it comes down to you and Peter or the stone, like I won't hesitate. But he said that before he went into the future and saw all those possibilities. And that one possibility, I believe, is
It's
him having to turn over that stone.
100%, definitely. And then later, he tells Tony that. He's like, this is the only way it could have been.
I just wanted to say, as far as the good, in that moment, how Strange is framed when he's going through, like that looks totally so comic book, like right off the comic book
super
page
cool.
with his cape out and everything in his hands.
I want to like talk about a visual flair that I did not appreciate until my third watch of this film. When he pulls the time gem out of space,
Out
From
of
the
the
star,
star.
he
The star.
literally pulls it out of
Star.
a like
Yep.
it's a star.
Yep.
It's
Amazing.
So ingenious.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
because
Okay.
you'll see the time gem twinkle before he reaches up and grabs
He
it.
goes like this. In the background is the star, the night sky, and one of the stars that it turns into the gem, and he pulls it down.
Wow.
That's amazing.
I mean, like, oh, that's a comic book moment.
it's cool, right?
Yeah.
So it's at this point that he gets the gem and he leaves. He heads for Earth, and that's when Peter says, "Did we just lose?" And that's when
Quill, Quill.
Yeah, Peter Quill says, "Did we just lose?" And that's when we head back to Earth. They're finishing. Well, not finishing. They're still fighting. But then Vision comes up off the table because they go up into the lab.
Oh yeah, because Shuri is still
Corvus
working.
Glaive during that battle killed a bunch of Wakandan scientists and soldiers.
Yeah.
And got a hold of Vision. And then
'cause-
stabs Vision yet again.
Again, poor Vision.
Yeah, because he got up off the table because Shuri was still trying to work on him, but she didn't have time, and then him and Corvus Glaive go out the
Shuri
window.
gets knocked out.
Poor Shuri. I mean, is this the first time Shuri has ever failed at anything? Like, was not
I don't think she
able-
failed.
I mean, she
I think she succeeded in separating it. His conscience. I think she backed that shit up.
You think she popped that thing right back in?
No.
I think-
she has a she has his
Copy.
AI.
Yes, she has a copy
Yeah.
of it, and I
Okay.
think they're gonna upload that into his body in the next film.
yay. I
I think
didn't
so.
think of that.
Because I don't
At
think
that-
she's gonna. She failed.
At that moment, I really, really wanted her to put on a Panther costume.
Oh, really?
So like,
man.
while I'm watching it, when Corvus Glaive came in, I was like, that was my immediate reaction. I was like, oh shit, she's getting in the Panther suit.
Nice.
And then no, it didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
But this gets Vision off the table and into the woods because at this moment, that's when Scarlet Witch comes up to him and Vision can feel Thanos. He says he's here, and then that's when we get him walking through the portal. That's when Cap sees him for the first time. Banner says that's him, and so this is when they have their one-on-one with Thanos. or Thanos just makes his
Smacks
way through
around.
everyone. Yeah, we have Vision saying it.
And again, it's a ton of fun to watch this gems, to see which
Yeah.
gems he's using
yeah.
to dispatch
yeah.
them.
And Vision says, "Look, I'm sorry, we're out of time, Wanda. We just don't have the time. You have to do this. You have to destroy the gem." We had that line that you mentioned, Brad, where he says, "I don't feel anything. I just feel you. So don't worry. It's not going to hurt me." And she destroys the gem. And then Thanos says that moment. Says something about
He's
don't have time.
he's like, I understand what you had to do. But he's like, we don't have time. We don't have time to mourn.
Yeah.
He's like, we don't have time at all.
Yeah.
And he uses it to reverse that moment.
So great.
And
Shit, man.
plucks it out of his head, causing an indentation. He drains him. He's now got the black Superman suit on. He throws his body to the side, and he puts it in the gauntlet. He gets the power. As he does this, it's that badass shot of Thor coming down with Stormbreaker, and he throws it, and it's going head over heels and towards him, and it lands in his chest. And the audience is like, "Yay!"
There was this one guy last night, like when that happened, he was like, "Yeah." And what I was like, "Oh, I'm watching you
This guy,
for the
yeah.
rest of this
I know,
movie."
I know.
Same. And so right after that moment, Thor's up close and said, "I told you were going to die for that." A callback to his lines at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
And then Thanos says, "You should have went for the head." Snaps his fingers, and then, bam.
Yeah.
So this is going to take us to the end of the film. So let's talk about this to the end of the film.
Yeah, I mean, well, once he snaps his fingers, we go back to, I think you said the soul
world.
the soul world, where he has that conversation with baby toddler Gamora, and she asks him, "It's like, did you do it?" And he's like, "Yeah," and it's like, "What did it cost you?" And he's like, "Everything." And then we cut back, and Thor's like, he's like,
What have you done?
What did you do?" And again, this is a moment I guess we're all going to talk about when everybody starts to turn to dust, but. The one thing I wanted to focus on, you guys probably want to talk about this too, is how every person that is turned to dust is also like when they interact, it's almost like in tandem with two people. So the first person to go was Bucky, and he calls out to Steve, and the relationship between, and you mentioned it too, is like Bucky is the last person that is from his previous life.
Right.
So to see him go, and then the
We
next
also
person,
know Red Skull's out there too.
well, Red Skull, yeah, but he doesn't know that. And then when Groot, the next person is Groot to go, and
Rocket,
the relationship he has with Rocket, and Rocket is like, "No, not you." And then we see
T'Challa is actually second.
T'Challa,
Yeah.
and then T'Challa, and then the whole thing with T'Challa and Okoye, where he grabs her arm, and you don't know which one it is, and when T'Challa goes, it's
So-
like Okoye.
What? Yeah.
Even knowing that, look, we've got a Guardians 3's got a release date already.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 2 already has a release date. We know they're going to make a Black Panther. But even knowing all of that, I was still shocked as hell that they took Black Panther off of the board.
And that's my point. A lot of people would keep saying that, and this was something else I was saying in my other review, where it's just like we get so caught up in this bubble in the fandom that people feel like they can't get emotionally invested because of all this information we know about these other films. But it's just like it still affects you when you get.
If you love these characters, this is a horrible moment.
Yeah, I mean, when T'Challa disappears or Spider-Man disappears, it doesn't matter that I know there's going to be a Spider-Man 2 or Black Panther.
The reason there's this debate is because this form is new to the audience. But it is 100% a comic book thing.
Yeah.
When you buy Infinity War or Infinity Gauntlet #2 and Thanos snaps his fingers in the second issue and half of the universe disappears, guess what? You know Spider-Man's coming back. His monthly title's happening, okay? Yeah. When Thanos rips Vision's chest out in Infinity Gauntlet, you're not like, oh, well, okay, I'm never going to see this guy again. You know, when Captain America dies in his series, he's coming back. But that doesn't, like, to have that like out of narrative point of view is so cynical and not in the spirit of the entertainment that you have experienced for the last 10 years.
Exactly.
And I know Spider-Man's coming back, but his final moments is heartbreaking
Yeah.
and certainly devastated the fuck out of Lisa.
I cried that first time. I was like, especially the way he cries out to Tony, and again, like their relationship that they have, almost like a father-son relationship. And he's just like, I don't feel good. And it's like he's crying out, I don't want to go. And like you were saying, he's a kid. Like this movie reminds you that this is a child, and this is happening to him.
And don't worry, even though in Avengers 4, Doctor Strange knows he's seen in the future. This is the end game. This is the only way it could have gone. And people will be resurrected. Maybe it's Gamora. Maybe it's we know, Spider-Man's coming back. Black Panther's coming back. Don't worry. There's going to be a cost. And Avengers 4 is going to resurrect some of these people. But goodbye, Captain America. Goodbye, Iron Man.
That's the interesting thing, because after everybody turns to dust, it's the original Avengers that's left.
Yep.
So that's going to play a big part in, I think, the transition or the passing of the torch or the sacrifice that these original Avengers are going to have to give to bring the new Avengers or whoever back from, the dead, which is going to be interesting. I just thought that was interesting that, and you have that shot in Wakanda when it pulls back and you see it's all the original Avengers. So I thought that was really... And Rocket. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool the way they did
and
that.
Nebula.
And Nebula. So I mean, there's a couple, but
Well, no, you're 100%. It's that way on purpose, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I'm really just excited by the people we have left and what that opening of Avengers 4 is going to be. Yeah. We still have not seen Tony and Steve reunite post Civil War.
No. Did you guys crowds react each time towards the end? Like after he snaps his finger, like I know the first night it was like dead silence. Like it's just amazing how quiet
every screening except for today.
It's just stunned. I saw it twice, and each time, like all that stuff that happens, you could feel that the audience is stunned.
Yep. Well, that's certainly true, and the way the film ends, so people, they're all dusting away, and I love Rhodey calling out for Sam, going like Sam, and like what I love is it's in Okoye's shot where Okoye is like is repulsed and horrified, and you can hear Rhodey in the background going like Sam, Sam,
and he was just right there in front of
him, and you can hear thunder rippling through the universe, and then Cap, his final words, "Oh God."
Yeah.
Cut to Thanos on his farm. His arm's all messed up. Gauntlet's all crazy looking. And he sits down, he looks at the sunrise, and he smiles.
Yeah.
Cut to movie's over, directed by Dada. Crowd can't handle
Heartbreaking.
it.
No.
Like dead silence. Unlike any other Marvel movie.
Yep. Each time I saw it.
And then people are like anticipating the tag.
Yeah. I was like, no, they're not coming back.
Nothing's happening in the tag.
Yeah. So anything you want to add, Lisa, as far as the good, as far as the end of the film?
I love the end of this film. I think that it's what needed to happen. Like, this is a Thanos film, and we had a complete story arc for Thanos. But I was physically sad. I was devastated. And we did the thing where we rolled right into our second rewatch, and I was not ready. Like, I had not processed the film, like, at all. And then the second time through, watching the beginning of the film with a bunch of people watching the film for the first time, I was like, these jokes aren't funny. Like, I'm just like, I'm fucking sad. And then the whole next morning, I was still sad. Like, I dip in and out with comic books. I've been reading comic books since Brad and I were together. Some comic books before Brad and I, but still, every single time a character dies, like, I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel it, and I feel physically sad. And like sitting through the end of that movie, it was like a nightmare. Like watching this happen and going like, this is impossible. How can they not win? And like, as you're gearing up for the end of that film and you're going like, okay, like they're not going to be able to turn this around like at any point. Like, it's just like being in a car crash. Like you're, like after you crash your car, you still have so much bullshit to take care of. Like, it's just like awful. It was just, it felt so bad and so good because it's the payoff of all of those emotional relationships we've had with these imaginary characters.
Yeah, it's still satisfying.
The 10-year relationship, the fact that I can feel these deep feelings is a tremendous gift. But at the same time, like as I'm having them, I'm like, I'm sad.
Yeah. I have a question as far as all the deaths pre-snap. Are those... Because I'm thinking, so Loki, Heimdall, Vision, and Gamora.
I mean, I would guess that Loki and Heimdall are gone. Like I said, I think Gamora could come back and will come back.
I don't want her to.
I definitely want her to because I want that soul world explained into the cinematic world. And I think I just cannot imagine James Gunn allowing or wanting to direct a Guardians film without her.
And that's the thing that stayed with me after the film. Like I just kept thinking, like, fuck, Gamora's not going to be in Guardians 3. Like Gamora's
we have so few women.
I'm betting right now Gamora's coming back in some form. But I mean, even once you get the time gem involved, once you get a reality gem into the hands of a hero, anything's possible.
Yeah, I don't know. It just feels like all the deaths pre-snap would be finite.
Yeah, maybe.
That's what it feels like. I don't know.
Not Gamora, but maybe. I mean, I think what's going to happen is people are going to, like those raging nerds on the internet, they're going to come into 4 and they're going to start seeing people come back. And they're going to be like, say, told you, meow, meow, meow. And then fucking Captain America, Iron Man, Thor are all dead.
Not Thor.
Yeah.
Just when he was my favorite dude.
We'll see. We don't know.
No, we don't know.
I mean, we still got a year to wait.
Thank God we only have a year to wait.
Thank God we got 2 movies in between.
Yeah, to me, like at the end of this movie, I was just like, I need the next movie now.
Well, like, you're going to get it in like 3 weeks.
So I'm excited.
And it's great, again, Ant-Man being that palate cleanser, just like how it was for Age of Ultron.
What a tremendous responsibility at this point.
Yeah, it's got a lot of cleansing to do to this palette. So real quick, let's get into our bad.
What about our tag?
The post-credit.
Oh.
Nick Fury.
Yeah, mother.
So good.
Dust in the wind.
I mean, it just does such a great job of reiterating what has happened. Mm-hmm. It's not just those people on Titan and Wakanda. It's the planet and it's the universe. Yeah. And seeing that helicopter fall out of the sky like Langolier style, you're like, oh, okay.
But it was a nice tag for Captain Marvel and what we can expect.
I love how people, the people who are outside of our bubble, are like, what's this? What's going to
Especially when you just see like a logo, an 8-bit logo on a beeper.
And me being the freaking tech head, I was like, those pagers can't have like color displays like that.
That's a space pager, and it is just paged space.
Well, it was like a souped up pager.
Yeah, they had
I think it's a space pager. I think Captain Marvel's been in space this
That's
entire
what I'm
time.
thinking. Like some people say, is she on Earth? She's probably on Earth. I was like, no, she's in space somewhere.
She's like hanging out with the Kree.
But what if she is turned to dust?
No, she can't be turned to dust.
She's got a movie next. So,
I know.
She should be okay.
She could be dust because the movie takes place in the past.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, that's true. That's true. But I like how they got that ace in the hole, with her. So just like she's gonna come and save the day. But I like how her movie is gonna lead into Avengers 4. So like when that comes out next March, that's gonna get everybody excited for that character. And then again, just like with Black Panther, 2 months later we got Avengers 4.
I would like to propose this. What if Avengers 4? What if Thanos isn't the villain in Avengers 4? What if he's out of the picture for a while for a film because the Gauntlet is shot to shit. His arm looks destroyed. His arm looks like the arm from Requiem for a Dream.
I would find that interesting, and I would not be necessarily against that. I would be super surprised if that's the route they're going.
Yeah,
especially if they're not looking to. I mean, they spent 10 years building up Thanos, especially if they're not looking to have him.
I don't think Thanos is going to necessarily die in the next movie.
Yeah.
But I do think that when they announced these movies a few years ago at the Egyptian Theater, when they had that big to do, they announced it as Infinity War Part 1 and Infinity War Part 2. And then they said, no. don't worry, Infinity War is its own thing. And like Lisa said, yeah, it is. It's Thanos' own thing, but it is not a full Avengers story. I think this movie and 4 are really going to be one movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he
Thanos
said.
is retired. He has nothing
That's what I'm
else to
saying, like,
do.
Yeah. But
the only thing that could bring him back is if somebody wants some kind of revenge.
well, and what is going to bring him back is that the people left need to fix what has happened. And again, spoilers, listeners, for anybody who doesn't want to know about production photos of Avengers 4, but we've seen that they have been filming Cap in his original uniform in New York City. They have reshot elements of the Battle of New York.
Yeah,
and the time gem is involved.
Because in production photos were scenes from the final scene of Avengers when Thor takes Loki has the mouth guard where he takes him back to Asgard,
Right.
And I think in that shot there was a shot of Ant-Man.
Yeah, and to go to Doctor Strange saying this is what had to happen, the fight is going to continue in the next film.
I want to play devil's advocate. Because the Russo brothers said they mentioned when someone was asking about like time travel and all that, they mentioned they didn't directly answer it. They mentioned the tech that's introduced in Civil War when Tony Stark has the barf thing when you can recreate stuff, and they said that plays into it. So my thinking is because Thanos has all the gems, time gem included, my thinking is that they use that to recreate the New York sequence to see if there's something there, a clue or something that can help them defeat Thanos.
Possibly.
Like, I don't,
maybe.
Possibly.
So because the Russo brothers said they introduced that in Civil War for a reason.
I mean,
that's going to play out later on.
At the end of the day, I know the movie I'm going to get is going to be great because every movie I've gotten I've really enjoyed.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And the fact that,
Oh, go ahead.
no. I was going to say the fact we don't know even what Avengers 4 is going to be.
Right.
Yeah. And that was one of those things where Zoe Saldana once referred to it as Infinity Gauntlet. And so that's been stuck in my head, so yeah.
All right. The bad, real quick.
Oh, I have a question
Yes.
before we move on to the bad. Given Pepper Potts is not dust, do we think the wedding is still on?
Do we know Pepper Potts is not dust?
We don't know.
I'm of the assumption if you didn't see him turn to dust, aka Shuri, aka
Yeah.
Pepper Potts, they're still
fine.
safe, I
So
hope.
therefore, but half of their guests are now dust, which is kind of like, silver lining that's a lot cheaper for a wedding. Maybe
That's what Thanos was talking about.
Destination wedding now.
On Titan. The
Yeah,
ruins
on
of Titan.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll be curious to see how everybody comes back together.
Yeah. I guess speaking to your bad, not really bad, but I have a couple of questions that I would have liked to have seen. Maybe the more I think about it, I might change my thought about this. But we don't see Xandar. We don't see how he got the Power Stone, which I don't know if we necessarily
don't
need
need
to
to.
see.
We're
But then
I have thoughts about that, though.
yeah,
I think we will see it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you have the same thought?
And Valkyrie. Because the movie opens and all
Well,
of
and
them,
Korg.
and Valkyrie and Korg, they're all on that ship at the end of
They could
Ragnarok.
easily still be there, floating around in space. They're Asgardians, too.
Because I mean, the fact they show Heimdall now, somebody says like maybe Valkyrie and Korg got away, or they sent them off on another mission when they attacked,
Or they'll be picked up by another distress beacon, like Thor was.
Like Beta Ray Bill.
Thor specifically said that half of
Asgard
is
okay.
still alive.
Oh, he did? Okay,
So
I
Thanos went with his usual thing of, I'm splitting them in half, killing half, and unfortunately, the half that they killed had Heimdall, Thor, and Loki in it.
Okay, because
So-
I was wondering about Valkyrie.
I just think they were like, we don't have room for these people.
They could have treated them the same way they did Idris Elba.
they could have, but I don't think they had the interest to do it.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I think he separated them out.
They're fine.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
fine.
yeah. Okay.
Just like Gamora's fine.
That's it for your bad.
Yeah, like I said, I mentioned a couple of nitpicks as we were going through the film, but that's really about it. Again, pace. I did have some pacing issues the first time around, but watching it again, it doesn't really affect me as much because of how everything kind of came together. Like some of the stuff on Never Delir, forging the weapon, I thought kind of took away as we intercut it between some of the scenes. But when we see the end, the payoff of that.
Yeah, but
then,
even like those scenes, I mean, spoilers, Brad's not going to have much bad.
Yeah.
But even those scenes that they cut back to Neville Delir, you're like, oh, these aren't what I want. There's so much awesome Thor stuff going on there.
Yeah. So it doesn't bother me too much. But I know my first watch, I just thought some of that, the pacing may have been off a little bit, but nothing major.
What's crazy to me is every time they cut away, I'm like, oh, no. Because I was loving that scene.
Yeah.
Like, oh, no, I don't care about Thanos finding some soul gem. Oh, shit, what? Red Skull? Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, they're going to kill Gamora here? Oh, no. And then they'd cut to, like, Nebula and be like, oh, Nebula. And then be like, oh, shit, Nebula.
Yeah, I know.
That was my experience with the movie.
Yeah. So that's really about it.
Wife Dork. Is there any bad?
My two bads that I wrote down when I was taking notes before the show. Well, one of them was the pee face, but that's already come up. So I had three bads. The line where like Thanos is walking up to Doctor Strange and they're talking about the Maw and he said he brought you face to face with a master of the mystic arts. I'm like, just in any context, that is not scary sounding.
Yeah, but it's totally douchebag sounding like Doctor Strange would be.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, to me, I just think that's just like a hilarious
And
line.
he's performing in that scene, too.
I know. I'm just saying.
I'm not letting anyone say anything bad.
I just think, to me, I don't think it's necessarily bad writing, but it's an eye roll every time for me.
I like it.
And then also, now this is a legit, nobody can argue with this.
Oh. Let's find out.
Tony Stark's outfit. He's wearing like a camouflage running suit.
So you saying this is badass?
With flares? He's wearing flares?
What's flares?
Flares is like a bell bottom, like a light bell bottom.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
like wearing like a boot cut jogging
He has
suit?
those sweatpants that have the drawstring at the bottom that you tie like that to close it, but his aren't tied.
His
It's
aren't
just loose.
tied. It's extraordinarily poor taste. And I'm not
Is that
saying
a
that it's
fashion
out of
faux pas?
character, but to me, it's just ghastly. And the fact that he's stuck on another planet wearing this the whole fucking time.
Love it.
I'm just like, I don't want you to necessarily dust Tony Stark, but if you could just dust the flares, please.
Love it. I don't care.
Gross.
I like it. I like the whole thing. I
Gross.
like that whole running outfit.
My pants legs disintegrating. What the fuck? So that's it for just his pants, his pee face, and what was there last?
And he brought you face to face with a master of the mystic arts.
All right, Brad.
That's me going like, well, they brought you face to face with a master's degree in music with a focus in vocal performance.
Oh shit! I didn't sign up for this. I'm out of here. Brad, the one bad on your list?
I mean, I said it already, but I love the Black Order.
Mm-hmm.
I wish there was more character to some of the other ones.
Yeah.
Corvus Glaive in particular. In the comic books, Corvus Glaive is really fulfilling the role that Ebony Maw does in this film. He's the right hand to Thanos. He's a really terrifying creature, and he's like
His design is great in the film.
Yes, he looks awesome. Makes a really mighty fine pop figure. But honestly, he's probably the weakest, or he's the one member of the Black Order who gets the least amount of attention. Certainly, the least amount of vocal performance
In the movie.
and that's a bit of a bummer. So I guess really what I'm saying is the bad is that the film doesn't have another half hour to give them more
Flesh them
room.
out.
I'd like this movie to be, 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours long.
Yeah.
I wasn't super stoked with Proxima Midnight's
I thought she was
look.
great. Oh.
I think to me, like, there were times where with the CG, like, there was like there
Let
was
me hold my
CG
Proxima Midnight action figure, Lisa.
There was like something fucked up like in her face where sometimes it looked like both of her eyes weren't on the same plane.
I mean,
and to me, like, I don't understand why, because she had the like fantastic like black on the top of her eyes and then it goes into these horns. That could have just as easily been done practically and looked amazing.
I would agree with that. I mean, I know Darren's going to say some things about effects, and I would not necessarily argue those things. But there's a shot of Proxima Midnight on Wakanda. It's a full-on her staring into the soul of the audience and the soul of the Wakandan soldiers. And I think that shot is amazing.
That's the shot I was thinking of too. Yeah, I think that's pretty. That's really good.
And I thought Carrie Coon, her voice was a great match for that character. Carrie Coon.
It sounded like Scarlett Johansson.
No, it's the woman from Fargo TV series.
Okay.
So I like Proxima, but I mean Ebony Maw's like super rad.
Yeah. Squidward.
Yeah, I love that guy.
All right. My bad would be it's kind of what you talked about, Brian. And this isn't just strictly towards Infinity War. I have one of my, not a pet peeve, one of the things I dislike in films is when you intercut a fight sequence, an action sequence. Because for me that breaks up
the Russos love that in particular because of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, and so but I think with this film, I guess it kind of had to happen that way because you have a war being fought on multiple fronts. And so I can forgive it for that, but just for me, because it's a thing that I just don't like in films, because for me it breaks up momentum.
What I enjoyed about it in this film in particular, see, I'm not letting anyone say anything bad about this movie other than me, is that the Wakanda battle's happening, and you know Thanos is coming to Wakanda because we've seen the trailer. So when they would cut to Titan and Thanos is on Titan, you're like, oh, so Thanos is going to devastate these dudes and then pour it on over. So I thought the way the Russos cut between Neverthelere, Titan, and Wakanda was effective from a tension standpoint. It was, or at least to my sensibility.
Yeah. My fourth viewing, I was less bothered by it. But my initial viewing, I was like, kind of like what you were saying, Brad. Like, damn, don't cut away from that. That was some awesome shit. But then you cut to friggin' the Iron Spider falling out the sky, grabbing Drax and grabbing Mantis.
Sorry, I don't know your names.
so great. And in 3D, everything on Titan in 3D was freaking nuts.
We haven't seen it in 3D yet. We need to do that.
But even with that shot, particularly when Peter's falling out of the sky, along with fragments from that planet,
and then falling through the ship.
Oh my goodness, so amazing. And then my only other bad, I guess, was I love seeing Peter Dinklage as the giant dwarf, but some of his line readings for like it's only like one or two lines when he was like what did he say? I can't remember it right now. But there's one or two lines that he said that just felt off to me. But other than that, that's all I have for bad that I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, like you said, when they cut away from those big battles, I mean, Lord of the Rings does that a lot. When you think about like the Battle of Helm's Deep and a lot of those fights, they always cut away. I think a lot of times you need to do that to kind of cut the tension or just to give yourself a break from the main battle.
The scale that is happening in Infinity War is cosmic, and I don't think there was any way you could have shot this differently.
Right.
Yeah. So I think
edited it differently.
Yeah. So I think it works to a degree. So.
All right. So what about ugly?
No real ugly that I can think of.
How horrible I felt the next day.
That's your ugly, Lisa?
That's about it.
That's my ugly.
All right.
Also, our third viewing, we were watching and we were sitting next to...
This was going to be my ugly.
Oh, shit. Well, we can share this ugly.
We'll share this ugly.
We were sitting next to this preteen girl who totally...
She was like 11 or 12. Yeah.
Her blossoming was like happening as she's watching Tom Holland on the screen. She's got such a tween boner for Tom Holland. And she is loving this movie. She is laughing the loudest. She is fist pumping the hardest. It's clear that she is obsessed with these Marvel films, and all of the anticipation that we have is packed into a little tween package. And
she's like munching on popcorn, just fully in the cinematic, joyous experience.
She is having a celebration. And so about like 3/4 of the way through, I lean over to Brad and I'm like, this girl is going to be devastated.
Oh yeah.
I'll let you tell the story from this point on, since we're
Well,
sharing our
and
ugly.
then so, Thanos snaps his fingers. I decide, like that Thor guy in the second screening.
Yeah, Brad and I are both like
How many screenings?
watching this girl.
Yeah, I just watch her, and as she's watching people get dusted, she's like, "Oh,
What?
oh, whoa,"
Oh.
But then Peter goes like, "Mr. Stark," and then her expression changes.
Her jaw just drops, and then slowly her right hand starts reaching for the screen. And as Spider-Man becomes dust, she is reaching out like she's on the roof of, like if she's on the ceiling of the Sistine
And
Chapel.
we're watching this in row 0 of Theater A.
Yeah.
Oh,
So like,
so you're right.
she is
I was
literally
gonna
like
ask you
reaching
where-
into
yeah, I was gonna ask
into
you
the
where
screen.
where you were sitting.
It was heartbreaking.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I know that is.
The
kinda
ugly
awesome.
is how much glee I took out of it. and how much glee I took out of every screening after my first one.
Same.
Yeah,
Same.
that's true. Also, kind of ugly is the falling off of enthusiasm from the first screening to the second screening to the third screening to the fourth
What do
screening.
you mean with audience?
With the audience becoming less and less involved.
Well,
Yeah.
to our point earlier, for me, with these movies, you better be there on Thursday night because the audience that's there on Thursday night, those are your people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're all the ones who have been obsessing these last 10 years on these characters and are going to react with all of their heart to everything that is happening.
Yeah.
So the energy in those screenings is different than the 1 p.m. Sunday screening that Lisa and I saw.
Yeah, I noticed that for my second screening, and just the reaction, like after the movie goes off, after the end credit sequence, I can see people in the front row, like already cynics about the film. They're like, "Oh, it's like, well, Marvel messed this one up." It's like, I'm not even looking forward to the next one. I'm like, all right, man, whatever. Like it's just like people. I'm getting that.
I mean, it's fine if these aren't your thing. I get it. Okay, I'm sorry for you. It's a bummer. I wish you could feel the way I do. I'm a maniac. You're a maniac. We're all maniacs in the Dork Cave. This is what we live for.
Yeah.
Like this series has been everything for us. This is our Star Wars, and I say that as somebody who had Star Wars,
Exactly.
who was there for Star Wars.
And I didn't like, it happened in our first screening, like when the title comes up and you see the title fade to dust. Like there were some people in the front that were laughing that I didn't like. But I didn't like that. I didn't like that because you hear that piano riff of the theme.
It's so
and
good.
I
think
love,
it's beautiful.
It's a beautiful way for them to show the title. And, just,
And to put a button on to, look what just happened.
yeah, absolutely. So
Like, it is the only Marvel movie that is not a joyous experience during the credits.
yeah.
You're not like eagerly awaiting the tag. You're kind of hoping, oh God, tag, make everything better. Give us hope.
Yeah.
And I guess it maybe does with Captain Marvel. But to be honest, this will be the first time I'll have seen a Marvel movie in which I don't care at all about the character. I've tried to read the comic books.
Oh, Captain Marvel?
Yeah.
I've the only time I've ever appreciated her is in the context of Avengers books. And
Ms.
event
Marvel
stories.
in
in the
current
context
Ms.
of Ms.
Marvel.
Marvel, the current Ms. Marvel. The Captain Marvel that's currently in comic books, I don't care about at all.
The one from Civil War 2.
Yeah, don't care.
I mean, we all know the MCU is different from the comics. So, I mean,
But that's the exciting thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, hell, I mean, all of these are different than the comic books. But I'm saying I'm bringing no love to Captain Marvel.
well, that could be a good thing.
Oh, it could be a great thing.
It'll surprise you.
Yeah.
Yeah. When that first trailer
It's
drops.
interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
For
like
my
it.
ugly, and my ugly with Avengers: Infinity War. Brad, I know you don't want someone to have bad things to say about the film, but it is it's more of a technical thing. It's the inconsistency with the CGI, and this is something that we've had discussions about in the state of filmmaking today, with VFX housing being farmed out, those duties being farmed out to multiple entities,
Because
and
movies cost
millions
and
of dollars. For me, just with the prestige of this film and what this film is in the pantheon of just cinema. Period. It's just totally unique. So for me, I would expect everything to be like perfect, and so especially with Marvel and Disney and all the money that they have, like, they should have no problem throwing however much money to these VFX houses to make sure these shots appear finished. And I don't know, and I guess that's one of the bad things about viewing a movie in 4K on in Dolby Picture or at the IMAX in laser projected 3D is that when you have a 4K TV or Blu-ray, you're watching your favorite movie. Now you can see the actual makeup on people's faces. You can see where fake mustaches are pasted on. And I'm not talking about Infinity War, but with the added resolution, you can see more of the reality, the texture. And so with my multiple screenings this weekend in Infinity War, there were several glaring VFX shots that either didn't seem finished or they seemed rushed or they just were of very low quality, varying degrees. But and I guess the part of it that's frustrating to me is because, like we were saying before, in regards to Thanos, like the level of detail and motion capture work and expressiveness that's conveyed through that CGI character does rival what they do with Caesar in the Planet of the Apes franchise. I mean, it is that good. I mean, there's shots of Thanos where you can see the pores on his skin. Like the back of his head looks like the head of someone who has a thick neck on the back of when
his
you see
ball
his
sack chin.
Yeah, you can see the hair on his arms.
Yeah.
When they have a close up shot of his arms, and so there's a lot of stuff with him that is just amazing. But then with Proxima Midnight, like what Lisa said, I don't understand why they just didn't go the practical route. She didn't have weird, like, shaped legs where a human couldn't have played that part. She was a woman, a very thin woman with, horns on her head. They could have done that practically. So my thing is, I don't understand why Marvel didn't make her a practical effect. And so, I mean, but outside of that, in the effects work, I just don't like, with the Marvel films, when they do an entire character in CGI, for me, that it takes me out of it. Like when they have T'Challa, when they have Black Panther as a CGI character, I'm like, why don't you just put the suit on the dude and just shoot him in that scene? Especially if it's a shot where all he's doing is just getting thrown or flipped. Like, just put a dude on the wire and do that. I don't know what their reasons were for it.
Time and money.
Yeah. So, but outside of that, narratively, character-wise, story-wise, the entire package in the grand scheme of things, I don't have any bad or ugly for the film outside of that.
My only thing I would say to you is that, like, the moment a movie is made, it is dated.
Yeah.
And especially now, like, we're going to look back on Caesar and Planet of the Apes and go like, look at that cheesy shit. It looks like Jason the Argonauts.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I still watch Jason the Argonauts, right? And I love every second of it. I still watch The Buddha's Palm, and even though that dragon looks super fake and dopey, I am pulled into that insane story. And so nothing in this film took me out of it. Like I was in it to win it. And I thought, to be honest, the digital stuntmen of Black Panther were worse than they were here in Infinity War.
Yeah.
And Black Panther is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
It is.
So that's it for our good, the bad, the ugly. We are just clocking it at a little over 10 minutes past the runtime of the actual film.
Yeah.
So how's that?
I knew that was going to happen.
This almost be like a running commentary. Like we put the movie.
Yeah, I know, right?
We're talking over the credits right now.
So are we going to drop this in one massive chunk?
I think so. I think you got
Can
to
do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can do that.
We like our massive chunks.
Oh.
It's special. It's the Infinity War.
You guys, when you're driving around, just hit pause.
Yeah.
Oh, they most
Take a
definitely
breath.
will. They most definitely will.
Or they can really hunker down, sit down.
They'll understand. When they see the runtime, they'll be like, of course, it's Infinity War.
I hope that the majority of you that made it to this point are as enthusiastic as we are. If you didn't like the movie, I'm guessing you're like, oh, these guys are just going to ramble on and on about this movie. What a bunch of Marvel zombies.
I think the consensus at the end of this film, when people, especially fans of the film, in regards to the length of this podcast, I think the consensus, the shared consensus, is that there's a lot to unpack with this film.
Very much
So I think it would be understandable that a discussion, whether it be recorded or just had, in person, will be a lengthy discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. So, I mean, I think there was more stuff that we haven't really, talked about or really just processed about
We
this
picked
film.
the shit out of that first scene.
Yeah, true.
If we gave every scene like the
Yeah.
attention that we gave that
The
opening
opening.
scene, which is what in our hearts we wanted to do, people. So you're welcome.
Yeah.
But no, this is not even my favorite Marvel film. I mean,
Same.
Yeah, I mean, even though I love this movie.
It cracked my top 5 though.
Yeah, it's my number 6. I think I still like both Guardians above this. I have to give it a couple more times, but it's number 6 on my list.
All right. Okay. Cool.
But I still think it's an awesome film. I get 4.5 stars. So
I mean, it lived up to the hype, and the hype for me was, atmospheric.
Yeah.
yeah. So.
All right. So hit us up on social media if you want to continue the discussion at ItModcast. Brian is at The Turtle Dork on Twitter, at The Turtle Dork 1 on Instagram, and at Brian William Young on Facebook. Wife Dork is at Sidewalk Siren on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. She's also Bake Dork on Twitter. I was getting ready to say your rap name.
Oh, don't tell them my rap name.
I'm not.
It's not going to come out until my first album drops.
Sorry, inside joke listeners. Goddamn. Brad can be found at Mouth Dork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd, and Untapped. And also, I am Darren Smith, the Disco Dork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Letterboxd. And that's going to do it for us. Thank you all for listening to this podcast, 10 years in the making. We hope you enjoyed the film. We hope you enjoyed the discussion. And that's going to do it for us. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week. And until next time.